worry about it. Okay.
I'll reach out to Dave.
It's blessedly cooler in here though than it was upstairs. Just to you, I assumed that when you went on that thing, I would have say a big bunch. And it actually did get cooler. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
We'll just take that $120 oil and pour it out the window.
It's like a double.
Yeah.
Double duty.
Your kids play both travel, soccer, and basketball.
They do, yes.
You're caught up in this, I'm telling you.
Get free time back in like a decade.
Yeah, I do know.
Baseball with my son.
You did? Yeah, I guess you got- Who's coaching?
Okay, we'll call to order the March 9th.
Recording in
meeting of the
progress.
Newton School Committee. We will begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Our fifth grader leading us tonight is Jennifer Nalina De Silva from Burr. And the good folks at Burr have this to say about Jennifer. Come on up, grab the mic. Jennifer is a new fifth grader at Burr School this year. She came to Newton from the Edison School in Brighton. Jennifer is spirited and enjoys humor and fashion. Love it. She always has a smile on her face. Jennifer's favorite specials class is art because she gets to be creative and make artistic choices. Jennifer's favorite academic subject is science because students get to work on projects. She especially enjoyed creating mini lakes to model changes at the RLC during our water transformation unit. You'll have to tell me how to pronounce that. You already know more than I do about that C. Jennifer likes being a student at Burr School because she has a great group of friends. So there's no obligation to participate, but for those who would like to stand, you can start whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Would you like to share anything about your school?
I really like being at my school because all my friends are really supportive to me no matter what they do, I do, and they always encourage me.
Wonderful.
Lovely.
Thank you. Great job.
All right. We do not have public comment tonight. This is a special meeting in a series of special meetings about the budget. So on Wednesday, March 18th will be the public hearing on the budget, and that will be a public comment night. Mark your calendars. So we will move directly to the consent agenda, which contains the 225-26 meeting minutes, as well as the 3-2 retreat minutes. And I will have an addendum to one of those. Field trips, donations, and a request to approve the Suzuki school rental of 191 Pearl Street. So I'm going to pull the 225 minutes for an attendance adjustment. Does anyone have anything else to pull from the consent agenda? Tamika?
I'd like to pull the Suzuki school memo for further discussion.
Okay.
And do we not have the international field trip? Was that not? If
It was
so,
in the package online.
okay, so I would like to also pull that item for.
I think it's in
further.
here, the exchange.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the Suzuki memo, field trips, and the 225 minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Victor.
All of it.
Yeah. Uh, Second, Jason. All right. Let's go ward by ward on that one. Ward 1,
Yes.
2,
Yes.
3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Oh, yes, sorry.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is yes. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Laredo.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take, we have 3 items to discuss that were pulled. The 225 minutes were pulled because of an attendance adjustment. Tyler was in attendance and Josh Morse was listed, but did not attend. That is that correction. Should we vote that one by itself or should we? Okay. Shall we vote to approve? Anyone got a motion to approve the 225 minutes?
Make
with
a
that?
motion to approve.
Thank you, Ari.
With the amendments. With the amendments.
With the
yeah.
amendments. Victor, you want a second? I love it. Okay, let's go ward by ward. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Laredo.
Yes.
All right, so Suzuki School, Tamika, or do you have a question?
So, I think it's wonderful, the arrangement to utilize some or part of the former Lincoln Elliott. I guess my question is, what, is it some or is it all? What are we talking about? And also utility costs. Who bears the costs for, the utilities for the facilities under this agreement?
It's okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Liam Hurley. Thank you to, actually, this was a referral. Suzuki School actually used to rent space at 225 Nevada a number of years ago. This is a renovation they're doing at their space, planning to use this after Horace Mann moves out of their space into 225 Nevada, which we're really grateful for as well. They're going to be paying us approximately $8,000 a month. That's an all-in number. We had planned, and I think you may, as part of that, is to actually offset the utilities for that building completely. So we're expecting to get about $100,000 in total revenue from them. They do have some options to potentially stay in case their renovation goes over. We also have the option to find other potential licensees out there. They're actually been looking for some as well. So they're going to be offsetting the majority of the utilities in that building. I think was kind of your first question. Secondly, they're taking about 7,500 square feet of about a 60,000 square foot building. So they're going to have 2 preschool classrooms and they've got about 5 other classrooms and some smaller classrooms for pullout. They've got a lot of evening kind of private music lessons as well. So I would just say it's about 1/8 of the building. So this is a lot of the building is remaining. If we should use that or have another purpose for it for either, and we put that into the license agreement either for Newton Public Schools or for potentially other outside renters if we can find some.
All right. Thank you. I'm good. I just needed to hear a little bit more context around what this entailed and I satisfied.
Anyone else have a question on that? Is there a motion to approve the Suzuki school rental?
I'll go ahead and move it.
Okay. Okay, let's go. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yep.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Laredo.
Yes.
Right. Yes, Tamika moved and Victor seconded. Right.
Liam.
And
Thank you.
the international field trip.
Yes, so this one again, additional context, it was approved and then canceled. Who canceled? Did we cancel? Why the kind of, there's obviously been some effort to reimagine the trip and just what's this about?
So there has been a leadership change at the Jingshang School since I visited there in the spring. The head of the Communist Party has made a unilateral change, different sort of tone, lots of delays. The reason that we were given was that there were some policy changes and they could not find homestays for our students. So they said they could let 1 or 2 come, but not the full contingent, and it just didn't realize the same impact. So we told the parents, we're not able to make the accommodations. The parents said, could we organize a trip since we were all geared up to go anyway? Can there still be the cultural interaction with China? And so that's what is happening here, is that those students who've been training for well over a year to get geared up to go will be able to visit, just like our other cultural exchange programs, not like the teacher and student exchange, but it gives them a taste and not the full experience they had hoped for.
So there's no view or window into when this will be resolved at this point. There's nothing like that.
Not yet, no. There was a hint of like larger politics at play in the world, but everyone was so polite about it.
I think it's unfortunate that the exchange can't run as it usually does, but I'm satisfied with that. Thank you for giving some more context.
Sure.
With that, I will move.
We'll move. Or do you have a question?
Let's get you busy.
No, I can hold.
All right, then I'll move approval.
I actually had a question. I was just a little confused when we got this, why some of these trips had already happened. Like,
I think it's just the running list. So it has the list of approved
Oh,
trips.
it's a
And
running
yeah,
list.
and it shows the date they were approved.
just, okay.
Is there a second for the second, Victor?
Nobody's like,
All right, Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes, Ward 8.
Yes.
Mayor Laredo?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. World's longest consent agenda.
It's good story, though.
It is. So we will move directly into superintendent's update.
Okay. So the superintendent's update is the superintendent's FY27 budget presentation. Thank you, Stephen. The reporter from the Fig City News has said that this looked like a horror movie swamp from the creature from the Black Lagoon kind of introduction. I said more like Stranger Things, but really, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us tonight. This is the first of many discussions in terms of budget for next year. I wanted to say last year was a very difficult budget year, as many of you recall, and I felt that the work we did this past year, funded by that budget, while it was difficult, has really helped us to stabilize operations and move towards dreaming about how we will provide innovation and equity and the implementation of our strategic plan. And as always, it's a privilege to serve the staff and students of the Newton Public Schools. I can't but be the proud superintendent of the district and just remind everyone that over the last 2 years, we've really tried to show the community proof of concept on our vision for student support. So MTSS is now a household word for many individuals, and that is general education supports given to students fluidly in their regular daily classrooms, so we avoid costly, unnecessary special ed testing and services, reserving those resources for those who truly need it most and able to, due to their disability, not just because general education does not have the supports. And our Ainger School is sort of a model of doing that over the last several years and ultimately attained their blue ribbon designation for one of those reasons. We've also had 3 other schools of distinction in the Commonwealth this year, and we've had some proof of concept further proven this year and last year in our 5 high needs elementary schools who were given additional supports last year and continuing this year while we still reduced costs and have seen reductions in costly evaluations. And this occurred because robust instructional intervention was given just a couple weeks ago. You sat with Dr. Maria Colby and me, and we talked about the reason that we think the MTSS pilots have proved that intervention works. The trend has continued this year. At the State of the Schools, we showed that students receiving the intervention services we put in place had higher growth rates than students without it, and that general ed's students were remediating weaknesses through services with math specialists and lit specialists, while coupled with the high quality curriculum we put in place into the elementary schools with trained staff on phonology and phonemic awareness, meant that students flagged for possible dyslexia or reading disabilities were seen, taught, and reduced from being flagged as potential at-risk students by 45% this year. And just a reminder, we're going to talk about numbers, but it's really about the kids and the students that we serve and what they need in order to thrive in the district. That means different things to different kids, but we're really trying to build those foundational supports so that every student can be successful. Just a reminder how the budget process goes. I work with our staff to put forward a strategic plan that I think meets your budget priorities and the school system's vision. I make a recommendation to the school committee. You will contemplate my ideas. The city has and will weigh in on its finances, and you must then decide as a body what you feel is the right budget and what components and what amount to serve our over 11,500 students. Tonight is me making that recommendation. I can't but tell you the story of the last few years as we begin talking about this year. We were given a challenge 3 years ago to right-size the budget and to come up with $5 million of reductions that would recur in a 5-year period. We took up that challenge and also faced a few other challenges from FY24 to 27. Post failed override, there were some major reductions that had to occur to meet the available resources that the city had at that time. That included a reduction of elementary principals, vice principals rather, middle school literacy specialists, student services supports, IT and network folks, software, athletics, and mentoring. So about $1.2 million of reduction occurred. Last year and this year in 26 and 20 and preparing for 27, on the way to meeting that $5 million over 5 years target, there was a policy modernization moment where $1.5 million of Medicaid Part B premiums were removed from our costs, as well as $1.485 of savings due to 10 elementary school teachers reduced last year, 2 middle school teachers, a projection this year that we will reduce by 7.9 elementary teachers, all of this to try to sort of right size based on dropping enrollment. That's roughly 1 staffer for every 26 to 30 students that we have lost in enrollment. But wait, there's more. We also worked with our former committee to ensure that we would create additional savings and revenue for the system. That includes internal programs that were made to guard against out-of-district placements, but also increasing fees, and you have most recently done that vote as well. And textile bins, alumni development, and strong fee collection across the system. Ultimately, that will yield us a $3.3 million cumulative total. I did share with everyone the complete list of efficiencies that we've been tracking so folks can kind of see what we're up to. I highlight the reduction of high school program due to attrition because I came to you earlier this year, good news, bad news. We also brought back 150 kids this year alone within the school year. I hope that's a trend that continues. I don't know if that will have a budgetary impact. So of course this forecast is made, but then there's the reality of what happens with kids. I think it's good news that folks who have left us are returning. all this the long way around to say it really was important to us to demonstrate to the Newton taxpayer that we are responsibly using their funds and that we have worked to demonstrate strict financial responsibility by meeting those targets, to be transparent about our contracts, to right size the enrollment numbers relative to teacher ratio. And when given strategic funds to use like ed stabilization, we have used them solely for MTSS reasons and to reduce class sizes. And we tried to do our diligence before we asked for any additional investment. I feel like it was just yesterday that we closed the budget from last year, budget season, and it was a rough one. And I think there was a lot of difficulty, mostly because of the sort of way the budget battle was framed in putting together this budget. And I just want to remind everyone that a total city allocation of $292 million was given. And there was a lot of jousting about $4 million of one-time funding used to pull certain things out of our base allocation so that the base allocation would stay low. There was also intense pressure for us to take on risk assumptions to balance the budget. One of those risk assumptions was to underfund substitutes by $1 million. The other was to count on our tenure turnover savings to the tune of $2.6 million. This is when you hire younger teachers when older teachers leave the system. And by older, I mean more experienced, not older. That's not an uncommon practice in districts. It's usually used to defray the cost of living adjustments. But it is not used in the same way to take on more risk for the system. We also had to save $3.5 million, $3.35 million from last year to carry it forward to this year. And also, while we knew that we might be have to implement kindergarten age due to a legal ruling, we did not have it included in the budget. And so we went into this year feeling like we had a really difficult hole to come out of, and we did. And I just want to say, our new mayor has absolutely taken away a great deal of the stress for the school system by not playing those same kinds of songs around the budget. And I just want to thank you, Mayor Laredo, for understanding and seeing what the actual cost of running the system was. And that $297.4 million base allocation was required for us to run the system, and that the kinds of risks taken on were not ones that you would have approved of either. So I just want to say you need to be lauded for this and for allowing this to be our base allocation. I do want to say our school system is complicated in that now that we can put aside the difficulties of our base allocation last year, I do want you to know, and this is not unusual in school systems, there are other monies that are required to make the school system run. So it's very important to us that you know, and I think a shared value for all of our new committee members, our mayor, that you understand there's the city allocation, and then there are other funds that are brought into the school system. For example, we have about $4.8 million of state and federal grants that are given to every district in the Commonwealth. And this is our share of it. It's actually low compared to other systems, and it is based on our system's wealth. Or I would say perceived wealth. The other parts that we get from other sources are out of district special education tuition reimbursements through a circuit breaker fund, which is a fancy way of saying the year after you spend the money, an account is reimbursed for the money that you spent. Sometimes it matches the current spend, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's more than the current spend. I haven't seen that in many years, that it's been more than the current spend. Fees that come from Newton residents, the carry forward we spoke about, which is taking money from the previous year's budget and saving it to work on this year's budget, and turnover savings. So these combined pieces make our gross budget of $318.5 million. So that's the full cost of doing business. DESE looks, Department of Education at the state level, that's called DESE. They do some peer benchmarking around this. It's important to me just to send the message to the system. Where are we sort of in the pack of high to low per pupil spending and per pupil expenditure? And we're middle of the pack here and this is the last available comparative data, FY24. I'll say the same for our overall budget and the district's growth over time. On the left, you'll see 2019 data, and on the right, you'll see the 2024 data. So the story has improved a little bit over time, and we're grateful for that. But it's also important to note that no matter what type of demographic is listed here, whether it's peers we compare ourselves to academically, people who are the same size, we're kind of a unique district in that we are suburban and urban, and we have a size that is unlike the rest of Metro West. So we tried to give a lot of comparators here. When we talk about the programs that we really desire our students to be like, I've tried to put those here and just say to you that we are actually spending at a much lower rate, and our districts are, our district budget is growing at a slower rate than those around us that we aspire to be like. And we are still delivering mid to top tier results across the system. So just want to point that out. What does that mean? It does mean that there are some resources that we haven't had to combat some learning loss and to combat inflation that other districts may have had in earlier years. I will say to you that many of those districts saw increased overall budgets because of the use of ARPA and COVID funding and how they were allocated to schools post-pandemic. In this city, they were used for specific things. Vaccine bonuses and HVAC upgrades dominated much of the monies. In other districts, intervention services, mental health recovery, and student services were used that are now starting to be removed because they have sort of remediated the situation. So feeling good about our efficiency and sort of looking at our place in the landscape, deeply grateful to Mayor Laredo for giving me fewer gray hairs with the base allocation, and really appreciated that. And I felt crossing the bridge into FY27 that I believed we would at least attain a level service budget in the summer. Very optimistic, feeling that some operational stability would be achieved. We were feeling good about our place in the region, and we had identified needs from our principals, but we thought we're going to be able to take some steps on that road to the Thrive budget model. And to that end, I want to say another piece I appreciate about our new mayor is him extending the vibe that he would not like to discuss the tale of five budgets. He would like to discuss, how do we get on the path to Thrive? How do we take those first steps? So our finance team here, Jason Bardawaj, Alicia, and Ben Schlesinger, all together, we talked about a strategy just to take all of the things that we've listed in our strategic plan and try to cost those out over a 5-year period so that the public and the city council, our students, our committee could understand this isn't just a never-ending well of fund requests, that these are the items we would like to achieve. Here's what they cost. If we break them out over a 5-year period, that $18 million investment over 5 years adds about 1% point to that annual growth rate. Now, if we aren't able to achieve something in a given year, like for instance, if we pause this year, we'd have to think about how to redistribute those dreams across other times. But the vibe certainly has been, how do we achieve those steps to Thrive? And so as I headed through December, I thought I was going to be bringing you all a 2-part discussion. One, here's what we want to do with level service, which would allow us to maintain services, accommodate fixed costs, and maybe identify efficiencies that we could therefore redeploy towards other aspects of the budget, or towards part 2, which is that strategic Thrive roadmap that we talked about. So we have a multi-year plan for strategic investments. We wanted to layer it above level service. I was thinking we could maybe even get there at level service in some places. So I made some assumptions about planning at that time because both our CFO and I have to start conversations pretty early in the conversation. We gave the school committee a bunch of different types of assumptions to look at. This is about our elementary and middle school class sizes. And so this is the one in the middle that I am going to use to guide all of the assumptions you're going to hear to guide the budget, and all of the sector updates you'll hear in the coming 2 weeks have used these same assumptions. The school committee has choices here. If you would like to choose different FTE reductions or additions, that is something you can do. When I release this over the weekend, the great news is everybody on the committee reads my materials and asks for other things. And here's what they asked for. They wanted to know, so what do those class sizes look like at middle school? So what you see here is last year's October 1 baseline. And my recommendation for this year, which is keeping all the schools level except for Bigelow Middle School, who we are advocating a half a team be added to address the enrollment distribution coming from the Cabot redistricting. So there it is for the committees and public's digestion. It keeps the overall ratio across the middle schools at 21.1. One of the members asked about how many students up are we? It's 35. That's 2 teachers up for 35 students. I also, just for kicks, even though no one asked, here's the elementary from last year, 2 pages, and the elementary recommendation for this year, 2 pages. So you can also look across those class sizes. So I want to say, like, coming through the summer, the mayor met the moment. The numbers that we said we were going to come through on, guided by a long-term plan and not knowing what was about to befall us, I almost fainted with that the number was the number in a good way. So we would have been able to work with that number and provide some Thrive improvements. So I want to say, first and foremost, there is not a villain to the story I'm about to tell you here, except maybe inflation. And I think that's probably a villain that's terrorizing many of our homes right now. So we were feeling really strong about this foundation, and that held strong till about the end of January, but some inflation and reductions from state funding kind of dashed the smooth budget dreams. So I want to tell you about that. So level service ended up not being 314, but being 317.3. And just let me be a teacher for a second. What is level service? I just want to tell people, ooh, where'd that slide go? Okay. So I don't know where it went. So 317.3 level service means that we are not making major programmatic changes. We are keeping the programs that we have. We are meeting the contractual obligations that we have. So unfortunately, despite the efficiencies identified, reducing by enrollment and just maintaining services, still getting the same amount of grant revenue, and we're at this 317.3 level service ask. That's a lot. That's a 6.7% increase, and that is outpacing even what our neighbors are receiving in Metro West. Now, mind you, I've been next door as a superintendent for the last 20 years. I was there, but the last 10 in central office. And during post-COVID, this was a normal number for people. So again, I tell the story, there was sort of a handoff that happened after COVID using COVID monies that allowed people to accelerate their improvements. And we just haven't been able to do that here. So what changed? What happens from the end of December until now? Well, we already knew about our salaries, steps, lanes, and COLA. We've had a contract that's been booked for several years now, 3 years now, and we knew what that was. But those salaries do constitute a 5.85% increase in the budget alone. Second, just absolutely undone by the benefits and health insurance costs. It's a whopping 10% increase from last year. Also unexpected, the changes in Obamacare meant that additional folks came back on to Newton plans that had previously gone off because of changes that the whole nation is grappling with. And then I will also say, I don't know what your utility bills look like, but mine have doubled at my own house. And Newton Public Schools is opening 4 new buildings in this year. All of them have a larger footprint, and all of them have air conditioning. So all of these pieces, while they're more efficient buildings, our utility bills are quite high, much higher than we thought, $1.2 million higher. Bless you. I also just want to remind folks that one of the state's most unregulated costs is out-of-district tuitions to special education. And those schools can ask for a restructuring of their tuition at any time, and they do. Regularly throughout the year, we receive letters saying we're changing our costs and we are over a barrel because our students are already in those placements. And so that number went up $930,000. And finally, if you recall, despite the fact that we did not budget for this, we were ruled to add 15 additional K-aides to this year's budget. Again, the mayor, without question, backstopped that cost, but that is an ongoing cost. So we have to grapple with that being layered into the reality. So again, lots of late breaking surprises here. Here are those details. Salary increase of $12 million, not a controllable cost. Benefits, almost $5 million, not a controllable cost. We have some control, mixed and controllable, over non-personnel and contract services, and I'll show you what those are in a second. So contracted services is up 34.3%. That is one part, the substitutes we were asked not to budget the full additional $1 million for, and just the day-to-day operations of the school system. We do have new parental leave in place. There are needs in the system. You know, a lot of our staff are in a sandwich generation. They have older parents and younger kids. There's lots of reasons that substitutes are used, and they are. In addition, I just want to say it is harder than ever to find folks who will take jobs like medical assistant jobs. And we also have a hard time keeping up with the sheer number of psychological evaluations that are requested for special ed testing. If we only have a 45-day window to do those tests, so sometimes we have to contract out for services there. I share this with you because it's another reason to invest in the MTSS side of things, because more confidence in our general ed program means less unnecessary testing. So anyway, so they're controllable-ish, some of these costs, but some of them are just exactly what they are. And you can see, again, they're whopping changes in the contractual costs. By the way, we're not alone. Districts in the Commonwealth are facing these similar pressures across the state, and state reimbursements have not kept pace with the promises of Student Opportunities Act or the reimbursement for things like special education transportation. For example, that tuition, those special ed transportation costs are supposed to be reimbursed at 75% each year. Right now, the proposal is 61% from the state. So you can see that level service becomes even more challenging when the same inputs are not there for the budget. So here I sat with all of this knowledge, wanting to tell you all about the Thrive investments we want to make, but knowing that that would actually mean I'd be asking for an 8% increase. So aren't you glad I didn't ask for an 8% increase, Mayor Laredo? But I want to. I want to ask for that because I want our kids to have it and I want us to fulfill the strategic plan. But I also know that we live in an ecosystem and we need to work within that. So here's what we had planned, and I'll just give you a sample for this sort of Thrive investment piece. So chunking this out over a 5-year period, again, about 1% a year if we were going to be able to do that. This year, we were talking about our math program upgrades, student services, making some changes there to add staffing at the day, bridge, and reflections program. The teaching and learning budget, you have heard me say over and over that this budget is about 1/3 of the size that it should be for a district our size, and that is also achieved through benchmarking. It has a budget for teaching and learning that a 5,000 students school district generally has, which means that a lot of the curriculum materials come out of teachers' pockets, and we can't replace materials that we start in a curriculum cycle. So we wanted to start building that back in. And obviously some MTSS costs for adding time to the elementary school day due to a citation from a DESE food service audit, and doing other classes like media literacy classes at the elementary schools and IT costs. So that's what we were thinking this year. But again, that would have represented me asking for not only 317, but adding a $3.8 million tag on that to 321 too. So not asking for that. but I did start asking myself, is there any way that we can, with a level service budget, redeploy things in the level service budget to accomplish the things that I've heard are the most important to the system? So those things, oops, what happened to my little clicks? The math program, for example, the teaching and learning budget, the expansion of the school day, the Bigelow team teachers, those are all things that we felt needed to happen and weren't currently in the level service budget. So I'm going to propose some things later that try to achieve some Thrive aspects, but level service means we don't do anything different than we did this year. So now, we put the school day expansion here for 15 minutes at the elementary school in the Thrive, but DESI's making us. So it's not really a nice to do, it's a must do. And I can speak more about that if you need it. So I was hoping, like, could we do some partial funding for these items? Because I really feel the urgency to do that. So what you're hearing from me now is a recommendation that has shifted since the inflationary adjustments have been finalized. And I just want you to know that I am recommending that we keep level service and make some adjustments within it. And I've asked all of my department heads, so the elementary and secondary leadership, teaching and learning and student services, human resources and technology, all to use the same assumptions. Now, the school committee has the right to direct us to different assumptions at another time, and we will show you what that means. And then the public budget hearing, after all of those discussions are had and any more information requests that come from the committee, we'll try to share those along the way in the next 2 weeks. So there's total transparency with the community, and we will have a public comment at the budget hearing on the 18th. School committee will then decide what they're going to vote to recommend for their budget. So again, the starting line, just want to say, before we even were putting forward a budget, we knew we were going to reduce by 5.9 elementary teachers. That's based on enrollment. The 0.9 is the commensurate specialist area reduction. So math and literacy specialists, art, music, PE, all of those. There's a ratio that you'll hear about when Assistant Superintendent Farag presents about elementary school. You'll understand how this all works together and how we reduce according to dropped enrollment. There are some increased class sizes that remain, and you'll have to look across those arrays that I shared with you and give us feedback on that. And we're worried because only one reserve remains there in case we have a whole bunch of kindergartners that move in over the summer, which has happened 2 years in a row here, that folks who didn't fill out the census and were not known to us suddenly arrive August 10th, and there's poor Aisha scrambling to get a person in the building. Oh, there's my level service budget definition. So to be clear, I'm asking for the 317.3. I am not discounting the very generous 314 that the mayor has said to us, but it's my job to ask for things for kids, and I'm going to do it. And what I'm going to say is that if a level service ask is granted, I will find a way to try to complete some of the Thrive pathway within that budget. Remember, we haven't been growing as fast as other communities. I'd like a little growth now, even though I'm grateful for the growth that you have given us, Mayor Laredo. Here's what I want you to know. Even a level service leaves some things behind. Teaching and learning is the core of what we do. A level service budget for the curriculum office and teaching and learning means that $925,000 worth of curriculum and academic materials, operations and safety, and equity and support activities do not occur for us, even in a level service. I do want to note, Mayor Laredo has offered $325,000 of free cash for a one-time STEM curriculum purchase. We already have done the K-5 version of the STEM curriculum. There's 3 grades left that we were to build into the budget this year. That's wonderful, except that next year that money comes out and the level service teaching and learning budget goes down by $325,000. So I want to say to you that that's a risk. It gets it done for this year. It doesn't get us the long-term sustainability for teaching and learning. So Gina will tell you when she comes through, the real nitty-gritty on this, but I'm concerned about this because the materials and the training needed for the teachers is just still not built into this budget. But what I can propose to you is that for 317.3, we will do the following. We'll make some modest gains in the Yonder Pouch program at the middle school. There were some questions from the committee about this. It's not $25,000 for pouches. It's $25,000 for the staff required to touch 700 phones at every school twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. It's actually $200 per magnet, and then it's per unit cost for the pouches. But the kids don't just put them in the pouches and cooperate. There's like a checking mechanism that has to happen. It would fund the STEM curriculum's ongoing needs and begin to restore funding to the teaching and learning budget. The Thrive gains that we would get is we will find a way to fund the MTSS for mathematics, which would allow us to implement the Math Pathways program and advance the math curriculum by 1 year across the school system. It also allows us to support both those students who are not meeting benchmarks in math and those who are and need additional challenge. It's not going to cut programs or students a level funded budget. So I just want to say that to you. The very generous allocation before us from the mayor still requires us to make some cuts from level service and some redeployments and try to find some savings. So that gap between 317.3 and 314.5 is about $2.7 million. And we are proposing to make some cuts at the central office level to $1.4 million. This has come up over and over with direction from the committee and analysis even from the mayor and his team. Looking at levels, been asked to look at levels of central office back to 02 and 08 and have done that and have tried to right size the central office. I am worried about these cuts. I don't recommend them, but there's a lot of oversight mandates from DESE and data collection and reporting that just didn't exist back in 02 and 08 that does now. But this has been an ongoing discussion across many election periods, and I would like to eliminate the doubt. So I'm going to work on this and have been working on it with the team, as painful as it is. There's been a slight interactive dialogue with the city about healthcare and really digging in to see if we could reduce that rate to 9% instead of 10. And so there's some decision that might be a good idea. There's been a little bit more granularity on utility savings, and that USB rental that you just voted in is going to bring in $100,000, and we'll put it towards those utility costs. We have found a central staff redeployment to Staff Bridge and Reflections. So those two programs would come from internal, in whatever budget we're doing, we would be able to do that. Again, the same gains, we get 15 minutes added to the elementary school day, the Yonder Pouch pilot. And remember, this is a 7.9 FTE of reduction of elementary teachers and keeping 2 at the middle school. So a net reduction of 5.9. It does not fund new math programs or new math teachers. So the impact to meet that allocation of 314 does mean those reductions of elementary teachers. It does mean less than level service for teaching and learning, textbooks, inclusion, safety, Office of Student Services. We would pause our strategic investment for next year. And the funding mechanism for that is a reduced central office staff here, about 12 FTE, which also means some aggressive operational adjustments like the utility savings, using our rental deployment, redeployment of that rental money, and assuming that healthcare decrease. This type of risk assumption worries me because I have a reduced margin of error for, let's say we have more move-ins for students who need special services, or there's some legal overrun or some accident or something that happens. I just feel like our capacity to absorb those challenges becomes less and less when we do this. So that said, if we're going to meet the 314.5 number, we can do what I just said, and it will be difficult, but I can't completely rock out a new program without staff and the funding to do that. If we are to add our mathematics program Dreams there, we would need another $997,000 of funding, which would expand the budget target to 315.5. I want that very badly, but I can't cut other classroom programs for that. I do want to just remind everyone that Calculus Project was previously grant funded by NSF. And for many years, longer than their charter allowed, it was something they spoke to me about specifically. We feel it's in line with the math pathways that and support that we've been pushing forward. So we would like it to continue. The summer funds for those students who are below benchmark, if we're going to compact a curriculum and make it essentially 1 year more rigorous, there are students right now in 6th and 7th grade who need support in order to stay on pace. And so I can't implement a compacted curriculum without that support. And we want those below benchmark kids and those above benchmark kids to be getting the service that they need within the system. So we have some choices before us. I'm really grateful for the amount of funding that the system has been given. I understand the inflationary pressures have stunned us all. Some of you have asked, so, you know, let's pretend you can't get any additional funding and 314 is the number. How do we put math programming in place? And these are not things I recommend. So I just want to say, especially to all the staff that are watching, I am not recommending what I'm about to show you. In fact, I think it's a bad idea. We're really trying to put any cuts this year into administrative central office side of things because a lot of cuts have already happened over the years. And we don't want to affect the classroom experience. So things like not funding charter maintenance, you've heard this story before in other years, not a great idea because we do need to keep our buildings moving along and getting those summer repairs. It has been suggested that we may again reduce the amount of money available for substitutes, but that is a risk for which we would need a backstop. And would we not have coverage at a certain point if we ran out of those funds in the year? We can ask that the city backstop us for emergencies or overruns, but I think the mayor's been very clear that he's trying to beef up our budget so we don't come back for these additional types of asks. After we get through the central office cuts, the next cuts return back to the schools, and that worries me. We really have tried hard not to reduce things that aren't quote unquote mandated by the state, but that we think are important. As a former fine arts theater teacher, as someone married to a music teacher, these are life skills and so important and aligned with the city expectations for cultural arts and community being part of what we do. We want students to have these skills. And indeed, there's a lot of research that shows they amplify academic success and certainly address mental health issues. If we are cutting those non-required, because I can't cancel 4th grade, right? So, but you don't have to run certain programs in the state of Massachusetts. I don't want to make that kind of choice. There is the capacity perhaps for 2 more elementary teachers to be reduced or not giving Bigelow those 2 teachers, but the class size is going to change significantly. Or do we reduce high school teachers and electives? With a combination of stuff from, I was just put together random vague scenarios so no one would be worried that they were on the line tonight. But these are the types of things that would be next, since you know we are not able to reduce those mandatory costs, and we have already proposed significant reductions on the administrative side. So again, my recommendation to get on the Bridge to Thrive is a level service allocation, and we will shift resources within there to fund partial teaching and learning budget and the math program. And we won't achieve everything that we wanted to achieve, but we will be stable and we will not reduce current programming or classroom supports that exist today. I always take the time to revisit your budget priorities after I go through my budget proposal. And I want to say that this proposal achieves the following of your priorities. And you can see the little tree of what's connected to what. So MTSS, academic excellence, student services, and breadth of programming. It's unclear if we'll be able to do these things, but I hope that we will. And surprise, good news, we think we're getting a sizable CTE grant, but it hasn't been officially released from the governor's office. So that is why I have not said that in my presentation, and I said it in 5 other ones before this. So just know we are continuing to put in the elbow grease to find alternative funding sources. This could be a very sizable chunk of money for the system. So school committee has some decisions, and then I'll rest. Elementary and middle school arrays, that's the class size discussion. Do you want to follow the assumptions used in this presentation? Do you want to reduce more or less? Second, do you accept the superintendent's recommendation for a level services budget? And if so, I'm recommending then deploying money to support math and MTSS. Is that what you want to do? And if you do not accept that recommendation, what is the budget number the committee would like to vote? Or are there different scenarios and analyses you need to see at our next budget meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open it up, I would like to share some background over what's been going on the past few months with the public, since we've been talking behind the scenes fast and furious for a while now. So starting in January, or let's be honest, we know Jason was building spreadsheets well before that. We have been meeting with the city. We began meetings with the city, Mark and his team. And we also had the district finishing up their grounds up zero-based budgeting, which they completed again this year. And so we've been meeting. It's been a very different process than last year, I have to say, in both transparency and in the level of collaboration. It has felt night and day. And as it became clear that the district faced cost drivers that you have just seen that were well outside of anyone's control, the city made adjustments to what I think they had wished and hoped would be a way to level fund and get us on the path to thrive. So we have already seen some adjustments made and have now landed at a 5.75% increase on that allocation that you saw was adjusted to the actual operating cost from last year. So we are in a very different place tonight than we were 4 years ago. Last year, we had a $4 million gap to level service after significant cuts had already been made. We were also unsure of what kind of free cash we would get and like what line item it would be designated for. It was a very, very different place. Tonight, we, assuming we make some central office reductions, which I think will be painful, but can be made, as the superintendent described, we have level service. And so what we're looking for now is to fill this $997,000 gap to get MTSS math for the middle schools. So I personally think it's very important that we implement the middle school MTSS this year. And so my suggestion for us as we discuss is to move into problem solving mode and figure out how we can figure out this just under $1 million gap. I think it's challenging, but I think it's a solvable problem. So from there, I want to open it up. Mayor Laredo.
Thank you, Superintendent Nolan. Thank you, Chair Peterloo. I just want to give everybody a bit of an overview as to where we are with the finances. So let me start off with a very clear statement. The allocation that we've put forward is the allocation. We're not going to change that. And let me explain why. This has been a very collaborative process between the superintendent, the chair and vice chair of the school committee, my team, and they've done exactly what they should be doing, which has been vigorous advocates for the schools. I've been doing budgets now in one form or another for over 20 years. And there's always some tension between what the schools would like and the ability of the city to fund those desires. We all want as much money as possible to flow to our school system, but as I always say, there's no money tree at City Hall. It does not exist, and we are constrained by Proposition 2.5, and the city is giving the school department, as the superintendent acknowledged, a very significant portion of resources. I know the superintendent said this previously, but it's worth reiterating. It's actually over 7% increase from where we were last year. Now, we baked into the base, and that was something that I felt very strongly about, that was the appropriate thing to do. It was fair to the schools. It was honest intellectually, but make no mistake about it, that's 7% over what we did last year. We also are predicating this on some of the work that's been going on behind the scenes to try to address our pension liability. I'm not quite prepared to go public with what we've been discussing, but I can tell the public that that has been a process that the school committee, the city council, my administration, outside experts from the community have been all actively involved in. Jason and Ben have been the representatives of the school committee on that process. Finance Chair Grossman and Vice Chair Bixby have been there for the city council. My team has been there. That, by the way, has been an extraordinarily collaborative process, but only if we get the relief that we're going to be seeking. What we're going to do next year, I want to be very clear. We're committed to that. I don't want anyone to worry about that. When we say something, we're going to do it, but that is going to affect us in the out years. And I also need to be clear what everyone in this room can expect in the out years, which is roughly 4.9% each year for each of the following 2 years off of the base that we are going to have this year. If that's 5.1% in 1 year and 4.7% in the other year, we'll make that work. And there may be good reasons why that shifts a little bit. But I do think both the committee and the public have to be aware of our limitations. And I'll just add, I took a quick look. Internet research is always a very dangerous thing to do. But, you know, I looked at Brookline looking just under 2%, Wellesley 3%, Natick 5.4%, and Lexington 3.9% increases for next year. Now, admittedly, they may have had different starting points, and I think superintendent went back through that earlier. I'm not here to debate what the exact right number is, but I just want to put it in context of what we're doing here. I think is very fair and very reasonable and matches my goal, which is I have consistently said, and I stand by the proposition that the public schools are my number one priority. And I think we've demonstrated that with the money that we're allocating to the schools. But I think our discussion over the next couple of weeks really needs to be grounded in the fact that that is the allocation, plus, of course, the extra $325,000 for the fourth tranche of the science program, which is a one-time expenditure because 3/4 of it has been done already. And this will enable the school system to make a notable improvement in 10, 11, and 12 to finish that work, which I think when the superintendent asked if we could do that, we said very quickly, yes, because it's a one-time use of funds and it fulfills a very important commitment that we made to the science curriculum, which I think is critical for all of us. So I won't go further. I do agree with the chair that I would personally reallocate some resources here, but that is collectively a decision of the school committee. Obviously, I'm one of 9 voting members. It's going to be the committee's decision how to do that. I fully understand that involves difficult trade-offs. I will say on the city side, we engage in similar processes. We constantly look and we try to refer to it on the city side as redeploying resources. We have a finite amount of resources, frankly, less of an increase than the schools get. And we take that money and we say, we may have put it here 1 year and we're going to reallocate it somewhere else, not because we wouldn't like to fund 2 very worthy things, but when you're trying to balance how you fund, you may decide that you're going to put your money more in one place than you are in another. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair Peterloo, and thank you to the superintendent again for being such a strong advocate for our schools. I really applaud you for that. I appreciate it. I think it's exactly the right thing a superintendent needs to do. And I look forward to constructive dialogue among all of us to get through this budget season in a manner that is, we're not always going to agree, but I think the way we're having these discussions is critically important and I welcome it. So thank you.
And
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Thank you, Mayor Laredo. So last week I tossed out 3 creative ideas for you to give us more money. I heard no very clearly. I heard no very clearly again tonight, and I'll look forward to continuing to hear it for a little while longer, but we'll keep thinking about that. Another thing that I want to think about with Dr. Nolan, every year that you've been here, you've been asked to carry forward cash from one year's budget into the next. I'm sure that influences your risk management through the course of the year. And I guess the question is really for Mayor Laredo. Should Dr. Nolan be anticipating that she's going to have to carry something forward again next year? Or do we think that we're going to get onto a path where she doesn't have to expect that anymore?
I would hope in an ideal world that you're not going to carry forward that much. That's the way I think you ought to be budgeting. There's probably always a little bit of money that by definition gets encumbered at the end of the year. It hasn't been spent. There's other things that go on. Look, I want to be clear about 2 things, Ben. One is, if there is a true emergency, the city is obviously here to back up the school system. That is our number 1 priority. We do that with any city department. If there's cost overrun, for example, we're not necessarily going to be here to back it up. I want to be very clear about that as well. So we're here if there's a true problem, if there's some disaster in terms of state or federal funding, if there's some really unforeseen event, of course, we'll step in and work collaboratively to make sure that the school system gets to function. But if we're off a few $100,000, you know, if we're off a few $100,000 in the city side, we adjust. And we do that within our budget. I will just add one thing. I think it will be very helpful as we go forward next year. And I think the superintendent's already talked to Mr. Hurley about this, that we have monthly updates of where we are actual to budget so that we're following that as we go along, understanding that's difficult sometimes to get precisely right, but I think it'll be an important snapshot for all of us as we're trying to watch our school budget closely. And if we see early on that there are some changes or there's a cost overrun in one area, we're able to make more adjustments earlier in the year. Understanding, of course, that that's hard in a school system where you're already making your deployment decisions really over the summer. So I recognize that's different than the city side budget, but I still think it's a helpful practice.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Nolan, we talked last week, the last time we were in this room, we talked about the subs and the contract staffing that had been under budgeted, sort of understood to be under budgeted.
Yeah.
In this current number, is that budgeted to forecast, or are we still shy of what you think is realistic?
We are at the moment budgeted to forecast.
Budgeting to forecast there. Okay.
I do want to say, I appreciate your question about free cash, carry forward, because that this year is projected to be $2.5 million, which should sound suspiciously like the gap between what I need for level service and what the mayor has offered. So it's close, right? So it does make a huge difference in how we're able to budget and the risk assumptions we can take on.
Right. So to go back there, I think the question is if we could get to a point where we were confident that the carry forward would be, say, under $1 million, then you could afford to cut it a little bit closer in June.
Well, see, the problem is that the money we put out here to you is the true cost of what we think this year is going to cost.
All right.
Period.
Saying next year, you won't have to put on all the hiring freezes that you have to put on now in order to
Yes, that is the goal, right? And I respectfully happy to report to you as many times as we want, but we knew about this $900,000. Like, it's not a cost overrun. We were expected to do it.
Right. And right now, the current budget for next year, we're not expecting to have the same thing come up again.
Yes, should it be fully funded. If you ask us to take on more risk assumption in the same way, we will do exactly the same thing next year.
Okay. The CTE grant you've mentioned to pivot is fully funding a new CTE program, right? That doesn't give us any relief here.
That's right.
Okay. And you mentioned a concern about the summer move-ins and the worry about only having one reserve. Does that ever break the other way for us where we wind up not needing? No.
No, because we're basically it's who's in our seats except for kindergarten. And what I should say, one time it has come in my time here that we've had one less section than we thought we were going to have, but we knew it before we went into the summer.
Okay. We never have move-outs that change the math on that.
No,
Okay.
not
All right.
in that way. No.
Thank you.
Ari, and then Jonathan, and then Victor.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Nolan and the finance team and Mayor Laredo for kind of getting us to this point. I do want to echo what Alicia kind of started us off with, that I think we do need to get into this problem solving mode. I think it's something we all heard as we were running to be on this committee is math is something the community wants us to see. And I know we're in a very tight budget year. I know it's a tight all around and not just in the schools, but I think we owe it to the families, but also to the teachers who have been piloting this. And if we are going to do this, we need to fund it in a way that they are feeling the support in the system. So I just want to echo that at the start of this, that I think we really need to get creative, put on our thinking hats and really find a way, because I think it's something we all know we want, and we do owe it to folks to try to find a way.
Jonathan? Victor?
Appreciate it very much. Yeah, I'm gonna first echo a lot of sentiments, even though it sounds repetitive. I do want to thank all the parties who've been very much deeply involved, because I think that that's a message that is extremely important for everyone to hear, that people are trying to work hard to do this. I agree with my colleague, Member Proya here as well, that this is problem solving time, but this is tricky. Some comments and then maybe a tucked in question there to some extent. I think the first thing for general public and also my just confirmation, the timetable is particularly tight because we're looking towards the April 1st SOA submit. Like the submission essentially to DESE is in more or less a month, right? Correct, plus or minus?
How are you asking about SOA related to the budget?
That's sorry. The timeframes that we have to solve this is relatively speaking about a month or change. Maybe that's the better way to frame it.
We approved last year in mid-May,
Okay.
which we don't want to do.
We do not want to do that.
No. And so where I'm going with this is there's a few different points that I want to raise. Number one, I agree. I think the Math Pathways effort is probably the most clear thing that I've heard speaking with other folks from the city around, and aligns very much with our academic excellence priority that we've been doing. I also agree that it cannot be an unfunded mandate. It has to be something where PD's professional development and support is given so that we do it in a correct way and not just do it half. You can finish the rest of that sentence. The second guiding principle for me, which I actually appreciate, I think was hinted at before by folks, is that we're based on Dr. Nolan's approach, impacting frontline teachers is the last resort. That there's been lots of efforts to address other areas before cutting those that are most proximate to our students. I think that's an important highlight to call out. The third one here for me is, and I know this might be a point of difference in some cases, I do think there's certain topics that we have to address for a longer term perspective that we're not going to solve before April or May. And they include, that's saying that we should do them, but that we need to have conversations around them. You guys have heard me beat this dead horse around. Do we need down the road an override discussion with this 2.5% cap, given the fact that we are costs that are far exceeding it? Not easy, takes time, not gonna be solved, for this cycle, but we'll come back to that. There's the pension timetable adjustments. There are questions we have to investigate about sponsorships or naming rights or other kind of creative ways to slowly create gap reductions. And this is what I'm doing on a personal level. It has nothing to do with necessarily school committee. I'm in my sort of separate job. I'm trying to see to what extent there is any opportunity on the circuit breaker Chapter 70 side to see how those evolutions go. It's not likely to happen anytime soon, and it's not a guarantee, but that's something on a personal level I continue to push and see whether we can get better help on that front. And the last one I think is hopefully with partnership with our NTA guys that we can reduce the number of teacher absences that drive these substitutes. I think these are sort of 5 core opportunities that I think can exist. Now the question is, many of those can't be solved immediately in this short time frame. Is there a way that we can? For me, the purpose of Education Stabilization Fund is to buy time to get those kind of things going. I see your head shaking, and perhaps you'd like to briefly address that, if you don't mind, Mayor.
We're going to keep the Education Stabilization Fund the way it is. We're allocating it the way it is. we factored that into our 5.75% increase, which I'll remind everyone is 7+% increase, plus the 325,000 we committed already from free cash. So I appreciate that, but we're not changing that.
I appreciate the clarity of your position on that. Yeah. I'll withhold the rest of my comments for now. Thank you.
Jason and then Tamika.
Thank you, Superintendent, for the presentation. You know, I just want to start with some of the things that Anna mentioned that she was very grateful for. I think resetting the base to the economically correct level is a big lift. It was important. You know, I think 7% or 5.7, I think 5.75 is the economically correct increase. And when you look over a longer time frame, that's how we should be thinking about it. And it's in the context of Prop 2.5, plus some change in growth, we know it's a big number. I think I also just want to acknowledge what you mentioned around meetings, including Ben and I in the sort of city finance group. That's been a really action-packed, intellectually robust discussion for, you know, what are our options?
I have to object to action-packed, Jason, I'm sorry.
We all have our own definitions of fun, I guess. So it was really well done. And I think CFO Lemieux really did a nice job of bringing in experts, hearing us all out. And, you know, when someone finishes a process and says sort of, my mind was changed, I mean, that's the mark of an intellectually robust process. So I'm really grateful for that. And I do know that's an enabler for where we are today. You know, so I just wanted to briefly, you know, come to the point, Ben, that you made around the carrot board practice, because we do that. We've gotten in the habit of doing that, right? And so if it was 3.25 a year ago and it's 2.5 now, we've actually just had to fund that reduction. That's a burden we carry. And so if we just decided we're not going to do the 2.5 next year and it's 0, that's like almost a percentage point off of the 4.9 that the mayor talked about. Like our growth next year becomes 4.0 or 4.1. So yes, I think we'd all like to be there, but it's not for free. It comes from somewhere. So, you know, with that being said, I do think that's we need to get into that problem solving mode to, you know, 100% agree with you. I really like, Ari, your idea of a thinking hat. So I think that's what we should be putting on when we're hearing the upcoming presentations. I think we should be doing it together to think about ways to, you know, find ROI in one-time investments. What, you know, similar to what we found with the opportunity for the science curriculum, it should all be on the table. And so I hope in the coming weeks, we all bring forward ideas, you know, in the context of, you know, $315 or so million, the $1 million feels like we can do this. And I couldn't agree more with what my other members said about the theme of math and the excitement in our campaign season and the subsequent excitement for the Pathways program that's being rolled out. So we really have to figure out the art of the possible around that.
Thanks, Alicia. So I want to start by saying that I really appreciate the mayor's strong clarification that the city will always be a backstop for true emergencies, true anomalies that impact the NPS budget. That's been the case for my 6 years on the committee, and certainly going back as far as your time previously, Mayor Laredo, on the committee. That's an important thing for us to preserve and keep in mind. And thank you again for just putting that out there with no uncertain terms. I think that then feeds into the question that I have for you, which is, can you talk to us a little bit about your philosophy around one-time funding? I'm very familiar with the previous mayor's approach, and I'm just wondering, is yours similar? Is it different? And in what respects, how? How do we think about our ability to access those funds once you've identified them and cleared them?
So I really appreciate that question. Let me be clear that I have a different approach, and I've asked Ms. Lemieux to develop a different approach to budgeting, which is, and I've said this repeatedly, but not necessarily here. I think you need to be conservative when you budget for the city. I never want to budget for 100% of expected revenues, turn out that you only have 99.5% of those revenues, and halfway through the year, you have a crisis. That's a disaster for the city. It's a disaster for the school system. It's completely unfair to the public. It's not good management. At the same time, I actually think you can be too conservative when you budget. If you underestimate your revenues, or if you say, I've really got to have, I can budget only to say 98% of revenue, you're leaving a fair amount on the table every single year that is likely to fall to free cash. And if you then say, well, that's free cash, and so therefore I can't allocate it as part of the operating budget, I think you've actually deprived both the city side and the school side of necessary operating funds because you are budgeting too conservatively. And the good thing about city finances is we have a roughly pretty predictable source of revenue. Most of our revenue is property tax based. We know we're going to get 2.5% increase every year. We know we're going to have some level of new growth that does vary. And the other portions of our funding is less than 20% of total budget. So unlike a lot of other places, we have a pretty stable base on which to build. And so I've encouraged the CFO to be a little less conservative when we budget, to budget closer to 98.5 or even 99% of expected revenue. I want to be crystal clear. We are going to be conservative. I can't say that over, and I'll say that over and over and over again, but that's piece number one. Piece number two is the work that Jason and Ben and others have done with the pension obligations. I'm not prepared to give a public announcement about the path that we're taking, but I think we've actually reached consensus in a way that if it plays out, as I hope it does, will put us on a much smoother path over the next 6 or 7 years when we were facing really much greater increases on the pension obligation that was going to cause some real stress on the budget in the outgoing years. So I'm reasonably confident we're going to get there. One time versus ongoing expenses, there's always a little bit of a edge to that. I mean, the superintendent talked about that science improvement again. One could argue that that's really part of the operating budget. Superintendent made a pretty good case, maybe an excellent case, that that's really something that's more one time. It's kind of an infusion. We'll put that in. I'm open to that, okay? And I'll continue to be open to that on a case-by-case basis, but I don't think that should go into our discussions about the budget for next year. But that might be I don't want to even discuss, but certainly a major roof leak, for example, that's an unanticipated capital expense. I would think certainly the school committee would come to us and say, we had this massive leak. We weren't budgeting. It's going to cost $500,000 to fix, and we got to do that now. I think that's an appropriate use of one-time capital funds. So I hope that helps a little bit.
It does.
Okay.
It's very
Thank you.
helpful to understand, again, just the philosophy around how you approach it. And I think it makes a great deal of sense, that approach. And so I keeping on the vein of one-time funding, turning away from the mayor and returning to the CTE conversation about I know we don't have the specifics as of yet, but when we get these grants, can't we or shouldn't we be thinking of them as one-time infusions into the system And if there's no way to replenish those funds, they are, we're going to be left in a situation where at some point, we're either going to have to make some reductions because we can't support it, or we're going to have to find new ways to infuse funds in to offset those costs.
The answer would be, it depends on the grant. So CTE grants that we just applied for are the seed money to get us able to apply for ongoing Chapter 76 reimbursements, which is through CTE high schools, which we have CTE sites, allows for that reimbursement after you have the program up and running. We just don't have it up and running. And
that
it's this chicken or egg thing, like
Yep.
you can't get into 76 until you fund 76.
That would cover the staffing costs and et cetera. And so fully funding that. program
Yes, I
for
mean,
years
I
out.
want to be careful when I say fully funded, because I got to see what we're actually
Devil's in the
eligible
detail.
for, right?
Yep. Understood.
Mhm.
I just wanted to follow up on that
Yeah.
point. I forget which.
Now, in other cases, we've received sponsorships or grant funding for things like our Renaissance Learning ecosystem, which all of our MTSS is based on. Like, I just pulled in a lot of sponsorships. Like, they're not going to do that forever. So we're going to have to put those monies into the base budget if we want them to live on.
Okay. So turning to some of the specifics that you outlined as methods to find the 997,000 and fill that gap. I have a question about two of the proposed mechanisms. The first being the calculus program, which is a program that's near and dear to me personally, but also I think has a proven track record of success in the district and a long-standing record of support. So what proportion of the calculus project budget does $136,000 represent?
So I just want to make sure this isn't a mechanism.
Yeah.
These are things that I see as key to the math program implementation. I also think the calculus project does what I wish we could do for every child. And so that funding has previously been provided by the Newton Schools Foundation, and 0.3 of an FTE has been funded by us. And last year, part of that funding was left out of the equation altogether. I can't remember what the reason was, but it didn't get lodged by NSF or us, and it wasn't in the base budget. So this is the full cost of all the things that calculus project requires.
So the 136,000 is the full cost of the program, include or minus the 3 staff who support it.
It's not
Inclusive of
3 staff, it's stipends and a 0.3 FTE.
Okay. So what would be the impact? And I think I understand it, of a $136,000 reduction for that program. What does that functionally mean for calculus project?
That it doesn't run if we don't fund it.
Gotcha. That was what I understood, which is not good. Turning to the $65,000 reduction for summer school math programming. Is that, how many years are we looking to have the summer school? How?
Yep, so it's not a reduction. This is all proposed additions that have not been in our budget before. So the 8 intervention math teachers at all 4 middle schools, the calculus project, only a fraction of, this is the full cost of that program, and summer school math. For 2 summers post-COVID, Title I funds were used to have acceleration academies during April and February breaks, and summer served 200 students for 2 summers. That funding dried up because we need the Title I funding to fund actual classroom teachers and those types of things. So this would be an ongoing need for students who are below benchmark. What I was challenged by the committee to come up with is, what is the system that allows every child to get what they need from the public schools rather than contracting with outside math agencies like Russian Math and things like that, so that we can make sure that those students can have access to all the levels of the math pathways that are being proposed.
So, okay.
A final part of this to me would be kids who have been placed in a pathway and they want to jump up. So they're not necessarily below level, but they want to do something more. That's not included here at all, because that would be another $65,000.
So as I look at this slide, at the, what can we do? We cannot do even more with less, that particular slide. I shouldn't think of these as things that we're looking to reduce.
No.
These are funds that we're looking to
add.
find.
These are Thrive parts of the
Gotcha.
budget.
All right.
I
don't
I
think-
can't do that. Like, I can't cut the level service budget by 1.4 million, well, 2.7 million total, and then cut another
so
997.
These are items you hope to preserve.
Well, I want to, but I can't preserve and cut all those things.
Gotcha. So
These
we-
add up to the 997?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Thought we were cutting these to find the 997, but that is not what this is saying. We're looking to preserve these by finding 997.
right.
All right, thinking caps on, let's go. Linda? All set.
Thank you, Superintendent Nolan, for your thoughtful presentation and iterations here. And thank you, Mayor Laredo, for your clarity and how much you have put forth. The way I see it is that we only have a couple of levers to pull, some of which we don't want to do. I think it was Ben who brought up the free cash. There's the pension liabilities, which is not ready to be discussed today. And for me, the third significant lever has a time problem, which is, so Victor asked the question of time here, and I understand it's May timeframe. So, I know I've said this before, but I truly believe with a school system as big as ours, we should be supporting a multi-million-dollar foundation that would help fund this gap. I believe all, with the powers that be in this room this evening, that we could at least, by mid-May, get partway there. I think we could set a goal and we could get all the way there by September 1. That would be an ambitious goal, but doing the math, we have 11,000 students, roughly $100 per student would get us there. And I don't say that lightly. I'm still, not sleeping well at night with the activity fees that we agreed upon. But I think that with the right messaging, our community, and I mean our broader community, not just the families of the 11,000 students, but the broader Newton community could get behind what we're trying to achieve here. And I think by mid-May, we could get partly there, and then perhaps we can address some of those with free cash, potentially pension, and maybe some difficult choices there.
Wait, Tyler?
Yes, I had, a question for you, Mr. Mayor. I know you've talked a lot about how you want to communicate with the public throughout this budgeting process, and I know I get a lot of questions from my peers surrounding the philosophy of different school committee members, and we're coming off of this period of a lot of tension surrounding the budget with a lot of other mayoral decisions as well. What is your philosophy? What do you want the community to take away from your conversations about the way you're choosing to fund the schools in NPS? Just a broader question.
So the takeaway, I think, needs to be that this has been a very collaborative process. I started talking to the superintendent and the then school committee leaders in the fall, actually before I got elected, but I took the liberty of speaking with the superintendent then. And those conversations continued right after I was elected. They've continued with the current leadership. I think this has been a very collaborative process. It doesn't mean that everyone gets to agree completely, but again, the takeaway is we have finite resources in the city, and we are trying to build on those resources by doing the work regarding the pension obligation. That's part and parcel of what we hope to be able to do in years 2 and 3. If we don't achieve any change there we actually may be in a pretty different place over the next few years than what I've outlined. But I'm pretty optimistic person. I think that we're actually going to get there. And it was also has been very important to me that we set very clear understandings, not only for next year, but the year after that and the year after that, because that allows the superintendent to do the type of planning she needs to do as best she can with, again, finite resources. And I think I have been really clear that I'm not interested in playing games when it comes to budgeting. I want to be straight with the school committee. I want to be very clear and open with the public. I think that's the way you build credibility, is being open and clear what your resources are and then what your limits are, which is why I didn't come in and say, well, you only get 3.5% increase and then wake up a month later and say, guess what? I found a bunch more money under the tree at City Hall. It just doesn't work that way. And that's just not my philosophy of how you lead. I think you lead by being completely honest with your constituents. You're upfront about what you can do and you're upfront about what you can't do. And then hopefully you demonstrate and you earn the public's trust by being forthright and honest about what your capabilities are and what your limitations are.
You talked about wanting this to be a collaborative process. In that case, how do you account for the discrepancy between your philosophy funding this as opposed to what seems like many other school committee members?
I'm not sure I quite understood that question.
It seems like you were talking a lot about this being a cooperative process to get to this point, and yet it also seems like in a lot of people's perspective, it's not meeting the need of the current district. How do you account for that discrepancy?
You're never going to meet everyone's needs. I've never seen any school committee, or for that matter, any city department, not argue persuasively for additional funds, and if they had additional funds, what they could do with that. I'm sure if we gave the superintendent a 15% increase, she could put that money to use very well, and it would certainly result in some improvements in academic.
That would be enough. That would be enough. I'll take it.
And I have no doubt that you do a
We are.
great job with that. But, that's not the reality of the world we live in. And it's no different than doing it, improvements on your house or other things like that. If someone gave me a certain amount of money above and beyond what I earn, I'm sure I can figure out good ways to spend it. And I'm sure the superintendent would do that. So we all have to live within fiscal realities, but at the same time, it's very important to me that we not create artificially low numbers and then somehow come up with money later on. I think that undercuts trust in the process a great deal.
In that case, what led to you settling on this specific number as your decision?
I consulted very carefully with the CFO, consulted with Chief Operating Officer. We sat down really carefully and looked at what our numbers were, what we could do. There's always some guesswork there. Bluntly, I would have gone in with a somewhat lower number. But the superintendent both persuaded me that the schools really needed more, and the chief financial officer felt comfortable in moving some assumptions that allowed us to get to where we are. Again, it's not precision, because you're always engaged in a little bit of guesswork as to what your revenues are going to be, what interest is going to be. You use your best judgment. You try to come up with the best numbers possible, and you put those out there. Good. Thank you.
Victor?
The concept of transparency made me think about raising 3 more points, some of which are I think, hinted at already. If I'm recalling correctly, I think 3 of the challenges that are driving us right now are, in no particular order, the healthcare, the absences, the out of district placements. Is that more or less accurate?
Mhm.
Right. And we have had conversations about why healthcare is difficult to change at this point in time. Just again, for transparency purposes, I think it's not like we can easily go out and rebid against BCBS, right? Or Blue Cross Blue Shield. We can't just go find another option there. out of district placements, I think that's a challenging one. I want to think about more before going too deeply into that one. And then the question of absences, I think, is a longer term conversation that I'll defer to our partners who are, our school committee members who are working with our partners in the NTA to determine how to proceed on that front. But I think those are things that we'll have to kind of explore down the road as well too. At least two of those are options for the future, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to do we go elementary and then secondary? Makes sense, doesn't it? Welcome.
Just waiting on the presentation.
Does anybody want to go out of order and entertain a motion about kindergarten aides?
I think it's good. If you're open to it.
So
You formally move to change the order?
I will
Okay.
make the motion, actually. So in our last meeting, we approved the budget that accepted the funding. We also need a little bit cart before the horse there. We need to request that the mayor request a docketing for the city council. So we're going to do this motion. I move that we approve a request to the mayor's office to docket a request to city council to appropriate $500,000 to the school department to pay for full day kindergarten aides. Do I have a second? Shall we vote or is there discussion? Great. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8?
Yes.
Mayor Laredo?
I will abstain, but I will enthusiastically docket the request.
Thank you so much. So it passes 8-0-1 abstention. Just wanted to get that done though.
Got it.
We
Thank
good.
you.
All right, Dr. Farag.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Aisha Farag. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education. And tonight I'll be walking you through our elementary education FY27 budget overview. The presentation tonight will provide information about staffing and resource allocation across our 15 elementary schools and what changes are reflected in the proposed budget and a summary of what this budget does and does not accomplish. I also want to take some time tonight to help everyone understand the mechanics behind how enrollment changes translate or don't always translate into staffing changes. That's a topic that I know generates questions every year, and I want to walk through that in the hopes of helping everybody understand how we approach that. Before we talk numbers, I want to ground everyone in the broader picture of who is actually in our schools, who are the positions who are serving our students. All of us went to school and have pictures of what those positions were in schools at the time that we went to school. I dare say, even in my own experience, that there were positions that I did not think existed at the time. I just wasn't aware of them. But certainly much in the way as other fields have changed over time, we've seen the field of education change. If you think about a medical model, for example, it used to be the family doctor was everything. And over time, how medical specialties have changed and evolved to provide a more comprehensive array of services that are responsive to patients' needs. The same can be said, and the same is true for education. Within the elementary education ecosystem, there's a variety of different positions. You can see them listed here, and they fall into different cost responsibility centers reflected in the MPS budget. You can see tonight, I'll be focused on those positions that fall within the Elementary Education Responsibility Center, which represents approximately, by my account, about 50% of the total FTEs that serve our elementary schools are represented within this cost center.
Just want to say, all of you asked questions about this, so pay attention.
So how do we actually decide how many people are needed, who goes where? This slide was intended to get at that process. So the budget begins every year with an analysis of our projected enrollment. We've developed explicit criteria by role type, by the positions, and then we do an annual review of the enrollment in conjunction and looking at school-based needs against that criteria. You can see that there are 3 categories of positions listed here. Classroom FTEs are based on established class size guidelines, 22 for kindergarten, 24 for grades 1 through 3, and 25 for grades 4 and 5. That's the starting point as the arrays are put together. Adjustments are then made following consultation with the principals and in particular student services as well to examine where there are significant student needs or programmatic design considerations that have implications for class sizes and allocations. Art, music, and PE library art, music, and PE FTEs are based on the number of classrooms served, not on raw enrollment numbers. I'll explain why that matters in a couple of slides. And the literacy and math specialists are allocated based on student enrollment bands. Title I support also supports Lincoln Elliott School. This criteria-based approach is what allows us to make consistent decisions across 15 different school communities that ensures access to the same constellation of positions and support for all NPS elementary students. This slide shows you the specific FTE ranges for library, art, music, and physical education, organized by the number of classrooms in a building. A school with 10 to 12 classrooms is allocated between 2.6 and 2.9 FTEs. That range goes up as classroom counts increase, reaching 4.3 or more for FTEs with for schools with 22 or more classrooms. You'll notice that these are ranges, not fixed numbers. The next slide explains why that is intentional and actually very important to how our schedule works. The reason we use ranges rather than exact fixed numbers comes down to 3 scheduling realities. First, the specialist classes vary in length, anywhere from 30 to 55 minutes, depending on the subject and the grade level. There are classes of 30 minutes, there are classes that are 40 minutes, there are classes of 45 minutes, and there are classes that are 55 minutes in duration. Second, the frequency, the length of specialist classes differ by grade level. And there are different numbers of grade level sections, even in schools that share the same overall number of classrooms. So some examples of variations that exist, just to make it concrete, is that kindergarten PE class is 45 minutes long, while 1 through 5 PE classes are 30 minutes long. Grades 4 and 5 each have a 40-minute chorus block that no other grade has. Grade 3 has a 30-minute recorder block. There are differences within the schedule. Finally, the ranges are designed to ensure specialist availability so that all grade levels can meet with specialists at the same time. This is part of what makes our block schedule work. Keeping our instructional time aligned across grade levels and providing for common planning time means that we need enough library, art, music, and PE coverage to make that possible. The range listed accounts for the degree of variability that can exist across schools of various classroom configurations. Here, you can see how literacy and math specialist allocations are derived. These are based on school enrollment using what I think of as bands or tiers. You can see here that schools with 300 or fewer students receive a baseline of 2.6 FTEs between literacy and math specialist support. See the rest of the numbers there. And it's important to note that these are baselines. And as you'll see on the next slide, needs-based adjustments mean several schools receive more than this baseline allocation. It is important to ensure that all students, regardless of the elementary school they attend, have access to the same systems, structures, supports, and positions that we're providing the same constellation of positions across all 15 elementary schools. That is the reason for establishing a baseline. It is also important to ensure that we allocate additional resources to where student need is the greatest. And here you can see that we have schools in each enrollment tier receiving allocations that are above and beyond the baseline we have established. Cabot, for example, our largest school this year, at 370 plus students, received 4.5 FTEs. Lincoln Elliott, which is smaller in size, received 4.6, but that is supplemented through the Title I budget as our one Title I school, elementary school. And you can see the FTEs listed here by band to size. So that's the background information. I hope that's helpful.
Here's just a quick clarifying question. When that last slide, is that 4.5 total in the school or
Total.
Not, and what would the baseline be otherwise for that?
Their baseline would be 3.6.
So instead of 3.6 at that school, you have 4.5. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
So I'll turn my attention now to discussing proposed changes in the FY27 elementary education budget. We are projecting a loss of 102 students district-wide compared to this year. That translates, as we look deeply at this, to a reduction of 7 classrooms, bringing our total projected classrooms to 240 across our 15 elementary schools. I want us to sit with that ratio for a moment. 102 students, 7 classrooms. That's roughly 1 classroom for every 15 students lost. That's less than a typical class size. And I want to be direct in saying that some years it falls that way. In other years, it does not. Other years, depending on the number and the distribution of the students lost, we might only reduce at a ratio closer to 1 to 30. It's entirely determined by how that enrollment loss is distributed across schools and grade levels. And I'll spend some more time on that in just a moment. In terms of the projected average class sizes, however, you can see here that they remain well below our guideline thresholds, ranging from 17.4 in kindergarten to 20.7 in second grade. Favorable sized class sizes across the board. I do want to flag for you that of the 240 classrooms projected in next year's budget, there are 10 who are at the upper limit of their grade span with regard to the classroom guidelines. combined with the limited reserve, and I'll be talking about the reserve shortly, that plan carries a degree of risk. In prior budget seasons, we often would add a section if for class size, particularly if all of the sections at a grade level were already at their maximum, we would add a section. And we have typically carried a larger reserve. This budget does not include that same kind of buffer. So we'll watch that closely. And we certainly have the utility of the buffer zone system to help buffer away from schools where grade levels are at their upper limits. But I want to be transparent that we're not operating with a wide margin with it when it comes to the way this is set up. Let's see here. Grabbing my notes. So this slide is intended to demonstrate one of the trade-offs of our neighborhood school system. And it gets at something that comes up every year, back to this idea of why don't classroom reductions track more closely with the number of students, with the decline in student enrollment. And looking at the math, when we lose 102 students spread across 15 schools and 6 grade levels, we're talking about roughly 6 to 7 students per school. And then divided further across 6 grades, that's less than 2 students per grade per building. So it's worth naming the contrast here, the trade-off here. In a larger, more centralized school, or in a system where students are redistributed between buildings, enrollment losses create more opportunities for efficiencies. When you have 4 or 5 sections at a grade level, losing 10 students might allow you to make consolidations more readily. The math works more cleanly. But in a neighborhood school model, we often don't have that same flexibility. A school with 2 sections at a grade level will almost always have 2 sections at a grade level. And a wider range of classroom sizes than other larger schools. That's the honest trade-off of a neighborhood school system. There are so many benefits. It produces belonging and a sense of community, stability, so many benefits that we've heard Newton families speak about. And it also limits the extent to which enrollment losses translate directly into staffing reductions at ratios that one might expect. Both things are true. So I'm just going to keep hitting this because this comes up every single year in terms of questions about enrollment declines and how we handle that. This slide is designed to make this a little more concrete with a side-by-side example to illustrate the point. So both School A and School B in this scenario lose 5 students at a grade level. And School A this year has 52 students who are spread across 3 classrooms. They lose 5 students. Next year, they have 47. And the math now supports we can reduce a classroom. They're at 23 and 24, falling within our class size guidance. 1 teacher position is reduced in that scenario, assuming this is in grades 1 through 5. School B has 44 students in 2 classrooms. They lose 5 students as well. Next year, they have 39 students, still across 2 classrooms, now averaging 19 and 20. They do not reduce a classroom because having 1 class with 39 students would not be something that anyone would recommend. So same enrollment loss, different outcome. It's not an inconsistency. It's reflective of the neighborhood schools system, the way that things are set up here, the way it is designed, a trade-off that is made in recognition of the value that Newton places in community. I hope that's helpful in addressing the question of why the ratios of staff lost to staff, of students lost to lost, the ratio between students lost and staff reductions, there we go, does not cleanly translate to a typical class size every year. Simply put, we build the arrays built on class size guidance and careful consideration of student and program needs, and then take every reduction the data supports. We just can't take reductions that the math doesn't support. Beyond the classroom-based changes, there are 2 additional adjustments for FY27. With shifts of the number of classrooms also comes corresponding shifts in the FTEs needed in library, art, music, and PE. And you can see here that we anticipate a reduction of 0.4. We're also reducing literacy and math specialist allocations by a total of 0.5, again, related to enrollment. So combined, that's a 0.9 FTE reduction. As Anna noted earlier, as Dr. Nolan noted earlier, that 0.9 FTE is being held in reserve rather than eliminated outright. We want to retain that flexibility to respond to any significant enrollment shifts that may occur over the summer, which is typically when we see a number of different changes. And I will tell you that it is not uncommon to see enrollment shifts that have required an addition of a section based on summer enrollment. It is a wait and see. I'm going to shift now to something that's a separate but important element included in the FY27 budget, which is a proposed change to our Wednesday early release schedule that's necessary to meet student learning time requirements. The Newton Public Schools was cited by the state for how lunch is currently scheduled on the early release Wednesdays. We are required to offer a dedicated lunchtime on Wednesdays such that all students can be served and eat lunch at school during school time. Importantly, lunchtime, snack time, recess, transitions do not count toward learning time. When we add the required lunch block to the Wednesday schedule, our current schedule will not meet the state's requirement of 900 hours of structured learning time annually for grades 1 through 5. So that's not a recommendation, that's mandatory. Our proposed solution is to extend the student day on Wednesdays by 15 minutes. This is the easiest solution at this time because this addition is available within our existing collective bargaining agreement. You want to check it out. Specifically, it's in the collective bargaining time and learning agreement on page 93. Anyone wants to look at that. You might recall that we currently have a working group with representation from the NTA and management that's been focused on elementary schedules, looking at how to increase elementary planning time for teachers and to make improvements to address a number of challenges that we experience in the elementary school day. This group has weighed in on this change, has provided feedback for consideration as we consider how to best structure the elementary school day next year. This 15-minute change, however, is responsive to the requirement that that we offer lunch on Wednesdays, and it allows us to get to maintain to be just slightly over the 900 hours per student that it is required. But it does not in and of itself resolve any of the other issues that this working group has been working on in terms of planning time or a myriad of other issues within the elementary school day. So that group is going to continue to meet to examine longer term solutions and recommendations for the future that we look forward to bringing forward.
And both Aisha and I hope that you will find some good ideas there that we'll be able to enact in future budgets.
Yes. So adding 15 minutes to Wednesdays does come at a cost. The total financial impact is around $115,000. Of that, $46,000 falls within the Elementary Education Responsibility Center. That cost covers increased salary costs for general education assistants and lunch monitors. The remaining $69,000 reflects the cost to student services, which covers the Unit C members who are also extending their time by 15 minutes. This is a compliance cost, not a program. And I don't think of this as a program investment or an enhancement. In fact, it comes with a variety of different challenges in the implementation and the structuring of the day. But it is the price of meeting the state's legal requirement for structured learning time, and we must comply. So bringing this to a close, we'll talk about what this budget proposal accomplishes and what it does not. As you can see here, this budget maintains all of the resources that we added last year to support elementary MTSS, or that we restructured last year to support elementary MTSS. Those FTEs are adjusted on the basis of enrollment only. We're not pulling back on that investment that we've made. It maintains our current Tier 1 programming across the board, other core instruction, all specialist classes. It maintains the existing assessments, the interventions, the data platforms that you've heard about that are essential for monitoring student progress and supporting our MTSS work. As you've seen, it maintains favorable class sizes by the favorable class size averages across the district. And finally, as I noted, it does allow us to add the 15 minutes on Wednesdays to ensure that we're compliant with state requirements. So I'm also going to tell you what it doesn't do. This budget does maintain the baseline academic resources that we've established across all 15 schools. What it doesn't do is allow us to add flexible general education capacity. And there are a variety of different ideas on my list with colleagues of things that we believe could enhance and strengthen our systems within our elementary schools. It's the kind of staffing that allows for a greater degree of flexibility in responding to emerging student needs or shifts in data without pulling resources from somewhere else in the building. It also, I should be clear, we, as a part of the restructuring last year, had a promised 0.4 total increase that was promised in this year that we're that is not built into this year, that we're not delivering on. It doesn't expand any building-based leadership or operational oversight at the elementary schools. Specifically, as I think about models, I think about assistant principal FTEs in our elementary schools, including our highest enrollment schools where the principal supervisory caseload is substantial. There is a great deal of research. Anyone who likes to get into the research, I'm happy to send things your way. That speaks to the complexity of the principal role as well as the power of the principal role. And supporting our elementary principals remains a need that I continue to advocate for, not just for the principal, but because it makes a difference for students, for staff, and for families. This budget does not increase, and this position is not in the elementary cost center, but I do want to speak to it because as a part of the work last year, as we were thinking about right sizing the various positions in the elementary ecosystem, we had some good conversations about the need to right size the SEL interventionist role, adding to the allocations in our largest schools. And so while it would be in the student services budget, I'm naming it here as one of the things on my list in collaboration with student services that we have not included in this budget. And finally, it doesn't address, this doesn't take any steps forward yet with addressing the longstanding challenges that I've spoken about in the past within our elementary schedule that really impact teaching and learning. The working group will continue to study those and bring recommendations forward, but at this time we're not moving forward with anything there. And I'm gonna end with this. This is my protect elementary, protect what we are doing. You have to be excited as we are to see some of the results that we're starting to see in elementary. And we need to protect it and invest in that. The phrase, I don't know where I heard this, but it came to me again in light of our green themes and our Thrive theme as I plan to speak to you tonight. Green shoots are not a harvest. We have some green shoots. We have some buds. We have some indicators of promising practices. That's very encouraging. The data from our MTSS implementation is very encouraging right now. The data provides indicators both that we are on the right track, and you also saw that, I hope, see the urgency around student needs and the disparities in outcomes among our students that are still very real and need to be addressed. Full MTSS implementation is a multi-year journey. Research, again, you want research? I'll give you research around implementation. Is very, very clear. It takes time to move from exploration to installation, implementation to full embedded, rooted practice. Early wins give us some data that tell us whether or not our theory of action is sound, and ours appears to be. But the outcomes, the sustained outcomes and progress to which we strive really requires perseverance, consistency, and enough stability for our practices to become routine. And I say this because too often organizations shift resources before new practices are fully rooted, and that upends any initial gains. As we navigate this budget season, I feel the need to stress the importance of maintaining the resources that we've invested in our elementary schools. Moving too quickly, pivoting before new practices and ways of operating are embedded, and that we see truly lasting evidence of sustained progress. That's the implementation trap we need to avoid. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I found that very helpful. Victor, start with Victor.
Thank you, Dr. Frog, as always. Wonderful job. This is on the penultimate slide, the second to last slide. And if you don't have the number, that's perfectly fine, because I didn't ask this in advance. I'm looking at the third bullet point. It says does not increase SEL interventionist allocations. Ballpark, this is for future thinking, if we ideally have been able to allocate those, what range are we talking about generally?
I'd have to get numbers.
That's
here.
fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Ben?
Thank you, Dr. Farag. You won the gold star this week for the best responses to the questions that we asked you. They were really crisp and clear, and so I don't have a lot left. But I did want to ask, are our part-time employees, the 0 point whatever, are they more expensive than full-time employees? Meaning, are two 0.5s more than one 1.0 due to load and benefits?
They take benefits.
If they take the
They
benefits.
both take benefits.
And we offer benefits to everybody above
0.5 and above.
from 0.5 and above.
Mhm.
Okay. How have we thought about trying to put together portfolios of work so that educators are working across schools and we have more 1.0s and fewer fractional people. I understand challenges with block scheduling, and I think that's probably especially for the specialists. But for things like MTSS supports, do we think about that? Is it the logistics that's just too tough, or what?
We don't, as I think about it offhand, we don't have anyone who is at a 0.5. They're all 0.6 or above. And so the challenge becomes in the execution of the daily interventions that are happening in our schools, even for those fractional FTEs that they spend a good time of their time in the schools. And so that's any time lost within a day in travel significantly reduces the number of students that they could see. That's a challenge there. And then devising a schedule that keeps you, that limits the amount of time in one school in order to be another, further compromises the model. It is a challenge.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and I agree with Ben. Really great responses so far, and only just a few things popped up while you were helpful.
So now I'm on.
Oh, you stimulate more thinking. Yeah, round one, round two.
You'll do it.
But seriously, I think your comments around this, starting with the specialists, because the block schedule, the complexity of issues, the challenges of going across multiple buildings, when that shifts year to year to try to find, we've heard from teachers that they lose consistency with the same students. That all resonates in terms of real costs. And I did think your examples of why a certain number of students reduction in one school or 1 year might break a different way. And so I don't really have a question about, the 7 reductions here versus a 0.9 there. I did want to ask about how the 0.9 FTE reserves for those library, art, music, and phys ed, that's being handled as a reserve, but that really could be across any of these areas where we bump into the next level of either classroom. So it's not necessarily for specialists, it could be for a teacher, we don't know. And I guess I was looking back, because in January we had a enrollment update, and was pretty impressed actually with how close the projections are on balance year in year. But I guess it's just with an allocation we don't really know. What have we typically had on reserve? How are we deciding on the one? Is it we'd rather have more? I'd just love to hear you characterize how you feel about that 1 FTE at the elementary level.
I'd have to look back to the documentation over the 5 years I've been in this role. I think typically the number has been around 2 held in reserve. I'd have to go back and double check that, so please don't hold me to it. How I think the level of risk is one that you have to consider. We placed all of our reserve positions last year. I do move internally if enrollment is low in one school and I need a position in another school. We have made those moves. We've made those shifts internally when necessary. But I think I think that's a level of risk that this scenario has. And would ask for your support if I'm coming to you in the summer to say, listen, this is where enrollment is at this point, and we've crossed our thresholds in the following places.
Thank you. And then switching over to the classroom teacher.
Back up again, because I think it's important that you know everything that I know, and that is that one of the benefits, and again, we're in a tight budget moment again, and so I understand, so I'm doing my part here. You should know that hiring in August is a significantly different story than hiring in the spring. And so in those cases and we retain excellent staff we've been able to retain excellent staff in those circumstances where we've identified, okay, these classes are already at the upper limits. where there's a strong possibility that, the enrollment of additional students will push us over the limit and we'll be in a position of adding in August. In those cases, that's the rationale for past practice of adding a position at that time. And then as those class sizes were reduced, it then became a buffer target. So then it became known that, okay, you've added a section. And so we know then that the majority of buffer zones enrollments will be assigned to that school because they now have an additional capacity.
Thank you. Switching to the classroom teachers, and I'm looking at actually the superintendent's slides here. But I guess I first just want to say, as we put on our thinking caps, I really do agree with the comments of fellow members that we want to keep the reductions away from the classrooms. But I did want to understand there's an elementary, A, B, C, D, E, F menu. And we're starting with C, which has 7 reductions, and all the way on the left, which is I'm sure we're going to find, but I just want to understand the why we don't want to go there, is -9 FTEs. And I think that's adds to, well, it would be reductions back from scenario C for a grade 5 classroom in Ainger and Zervis and two elementary schools.
So those additions were made back on the Council of Student Services to preserve programmatic considerations and to serve specific student needs at those schools.
Thanks. And and the student needs pieces aside, which I think are really important to consider, just looking at the numbers, I was doing the raw math on what I presume is the scenario C for these 2 schools. And one of them has 4 classrooms of grade 5 that were averaging 17.5. 2 were 17, 2 were 18. And so if I'm taking all the instruction we had, to get to the -1 in that classroom, we'd be going to 3 classrooms at 23 students, which I think is right on the cusp of the edge before we even consider some of the student needs.
That's right.
And so I just want to make sure we're establishing why that's a hard scenario. It's sounding hard to me, but am I thinking about that right?
Yes.
Yes.
It also bears on the data that that's why we wanted to bring you the midwinter data. So where those children are and what their needs are also important.
Yeah. And there's the second school that I was looking at that was mentioned has us going from, I think, 3 classrooms in grade 5 that are 20, 19, and 19. And if we went to 2, it would be like 29 kids per class. So that just seems like we absolutely can't do it.
I would never recommend that.
Okay. So that's what I just wanted to establish is that we said, if you recommend and we go down to scenario A, I think that's a pretty painful thing to do.
And again, I should point out that, again, in the past, we have had a concerted effort, particularly in grades K and 1 and 2, at maintaining, at erring on the side of smaller classrooms, those in the teens as much as possible, given research about early education and early education gains and the impacts of smaller class sizes in those youngest grades. In this scenario we're putting forward, school committee, past school committee, and I believe you as well have indicated a willingness to look at higher class sizes in support of the overall budget, and that's reflected here. And again, just giving you information about the rationale and past practices, I share that information with you.
Thanks. And then finally, I just had a note, I think more of a comment, because I think it was really helpful that you laid out what's not in the budget. And I know we'd like to be investing in some of those things. The mapping's a little bit different than some of the things, but the majority of those I know we've contemplated as we've thought about Thrive. And so I just want the community to know that this is a tough year and we're focused on math and how do we get that $1 million to make that work. But I do think we want to listen and make sure this is part of a multi-year arc. So I just want that fairly noted. May not be in the cards for 2027, but we don't want it to, fade into the background.
I appreciate that. The extent to which we can remember that elementary school is still growing and we there are additional shifts that are in the overall ecosystem that I think will help us to continue to build exceptionally strong elementary school experience.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Linda, go ahead.
I just have a super quick question here. The digital learning coaches, I didn't see them on the FTE chart. Can you clarify?
That will be addressed in Stephen
Stephen
Retendi's
Retendi's.
presentation.
Library and Instructional Technology Department.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Did you want to do a quick interlude on this, unless you don't think it's going to be quick?
Oh, an interlude, sure.
This year, yeah.
Do we want to go out of order quickly and have Jill maybe come up and do policy update?
Just so you can head out, Jill. I don't think this is controversial since almost no one asked any questions about it, but I could be wrong.
Good evening. For some of you haven't seen me come up here yet in this role, but I come up often when we start rolling out policy revisions. I think the last one was virtual because of the snowstorm, but this is something I do fairly often after meeting with the with the policy subcommittee. The one that's just up for you today is something that was recommended by the Mass Association of School Committees. They periodically do audits and send notifications out on policies that should be updated based on times changing. Sometimes usually when there's a legal change or law change, that'll prompt a notification as well. This is just one that was recommended. It really doesn't change anything. It just restates what the law is on the parent advisory committees, LPAC and CPAC, but it makes it more visible and prominent in terms of our policy and what's on our site, that this is what we're doing. It's in our, it's in our practice. It's required by statutory law. It doesn't change anything that we've been doing. There's been no change in the law. It's just more recommended policy to have it more visible. So if anyone had any questions, happy to answer that, but this one really wasn't wasn't a lot of substance. We did seek feedback from. Oh, right. CPAC And we and- did seek feedback, we shared it with the CPAC board
And the LDAC.
and the LPAC and the ELL department as well, who works very closely with the LPAC. And they really didn't have any input. They were good with the policy. Like I said, it really just restates the law and obligation and just shows our commitment, the district's commitment to it. Questions? No? There a motion to approve? Oh, no, this is the first read. Oh, first read, sorry. Yeah, just out of practice, in case
read. It's
somebody is listening to this meeting and has some input.
Read.
And then it can be on the docket for next time.
Thank you, Jill.
All right. Now, should we welcome
Right.
Dr. Roundtree?
This is Dr. Jean Roundtree, our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Schools.
We're gonna do the vote. We do the vote on the number.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Before I start my budget presentation, I just want to make sure that I wish happy birthday to Lisa Mazzola, who is the other half of the secondary education team. Happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday to you. Happy
Birthday, dear Lisa. Happy birthday to you.
Oh. Somebody's got some pipes. I know, that was good. I'm so impressed. All right.
Now we'll have to do that.
We're ha-
Standards.
I said, we're having a retreat just to sing some song. It's good.
Right, so I'm here to talk about the secondary schools budget and focusing on changes that we're looking for next year. So similar to what what Dr. Farag presented, I'm going to be focusing mostly on things that are in the secondary education budget. The core staffing for the schools is on our budget. Some of our special programs. Also in the secondary school budget are the contractual stipends for any of the teacher, like unit A, B, or C tasks that are stipended, arrival, dismissal, supervision, any of the contracted services that we use. For the high schools, there's a big portion of the secondary school budget is the athletics budget. Also consumables for science supplies, things like that. A lot of the technology lines are in the secondary school budget. Also, the secondary budget covers a lot of the professional memberships or any of the periodicals or things that are used in secondary schools. So I'm going to start off just by talking about shifts in enrollment that we are projecting for next year. So overall, for the middle schools, we're expecting to be a little bit bigger across our middle schools. We are projected to have 35 more students in middle school next year than we have this year. The school that we're going to project the largest enrollment increase is Bigelow. And so in order to account for the 56 additional students that we're expecting to enroll at Bigelow Middle School, we feel that it is necessary to add 2 core teachers so that we can maintain level and equitable class sizes with the other middle schools. It's also very important to note that we have a buffer zone that's part of the Cabot split that also that we are able to be strategic about the enrollment at Bigelow versus Day. And so we have those factor into part of the reason that the enrollment is increasing at Bigelow. So we do have some slight enrollment decreases in the middle schools over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years, we've projected minor enrollment dips at Brown and at Day. We've recommended level staffing because, as Dr. Farag pointed out, the need, our schools support students with complex needs from year to year. We may have bubbles of students that have larger needs, and so we do have cohorts at Brown rising 7th graders and at Day rising 8th graders. That the complexity of the needs indicates that that it would be in our best interest, in the students' best interest, to maintain level staffing. Obviously, the larger the team size, the less individual attention we are able to provide to students, and so maintaining those team sizes helps us have a very good and strategic class size for those groups. So the proposed investments, so we've talked about this in the superintendent's budget proposal, is that we and also thinking back to last year's proposal, we really wanted to emphasize the importance of having math and literacy specialists because of all of the work we're doing with the math pathways. We are recommending 8.0 FTE increase so that we would have 2 math specialists at each middle school that would support the pathways work, doing all that we can to accelerate students so that they can be prepared for math opportunities at the high school level. We are also recommending an increase of 2 positions at Day Middle School to support their special education programming, 1 FTE for an additional teacher for the Reflections program, and 1 additional FTE for a clinician for the Bridge program. And we feel like the programmatic needs of the students and the way that as we provide increasingly effective supports for those 2 programs, it also has an overall impact on the school. And so we are making those recommendations for next year as part of the budget proposal. We are also, and as I said, part of the secondary budget also includes stipends. And so a lot of the things that we we do also require the people power to do it. I think one of the best initiatives we have going at the middle school level is the Yonder pouches. I know that our students, if there are any up watching, they may not agree. But in terms of classroom instruction, and I visit classrooms often with school leaders, it's a big part of the reason why the kids are so focused is because the cell phones have been effectively eliminated as a distraction. Doesn't mean that we don't have some students that try to be clever, but I will venture to say that our administrators are more clever, and the way that we have the effective systems set up requires that we have people at arrival to make sure that that all the students put their phones into the Yonder pouches. I'll just shout out, I believe it's Oak Hill. They have a list of students. They know all the kids who have cell phones in the entire school. So if for any reason a student shows up and they don't have a cell phone to put in the pouch, they know that the admin team has to make a phone call. And so in order to have these really diligent and detail-oriented processes, we need to be able to pay Unit A and Unit C staff to be able to man the doors and do that sort of supportive work. In addition to that, we have some students that arrive to school before the start of the school day, and some students that stay after. Some of these students are delivered early, by our school buses. Other schools have large walker populations that may arrive early, and of course, we want to encourage students to arrive on time or early to school. But it also means that we have to ensure a safe environment for those students when they arrive, and so we need some additional funds to make sure that we're able to stipend teachers to supervise the areas that students sit in while they're waiting for the school day to start, or at the end of the school day, particularly, for instance, Brown and Oak Hill share a Metro bus. And so because Brown starts later, the students at Oak Hill have to wait for an additional 30 minutes after school so they can ride the bus with Brown students. And we need also to be able to effectively provide support and supervision for that time. Earlier this year, the school committee approved a fee memo so that we could start a formal program for students that we know are frequently arriving early or staying late. Right now, we are not able to project how many families are going to take advantage of that and exactly what that will look like. And so I have entered these stipends just to ensure that we have the resources that we need to do that. And as we establish the program and collect fees, we can make adjustments. And potentially, if we do a really good job with fee collection, we can apply this to some of the other things that were cut out of last year's budget, particularly the after-school tutoring stipends that made a major impact in student learning that we had to cut during the last budget cycle. So this proposal for middle school adds the 8 math specialists that will help support our MTSS and math pathways. It adds a teacher and a clinician at Day Middle School to support the Bridge and Reflection programs. It adds $20,000 for operational stipends. It maintains the monies that we set aside for Yonder pouches, magnets, and consumables. And it also maintains the teacher leadership stipends. Our school leaders will stipend teacher leaders to take on some specific strategic roles, including planning advisory. That is one of the big things that that our teachers are stipended for that really impacts student experience, and we're going to maintain those stipends in this budget. So obviously, we there are things that we want that we does not look like that we will be able to include in this year's budget proposal, and so the first one I want to talk about is that Bigelow Middle School has one less assistant principal than the other middle schools, and it is smaller. But as we do have an increase of students there, it would be good to make sure that we're also adding proportionally to the administrative oversight that the larger student group requires. I find that there is a fixed amount of work that administrative team has to do, and so it's not. And so even if your school is a little bit smaller, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have 25% less work to do, even if you have a lower enrollment. And so we've been in conversations for the last 2 years about thinking about ways that we can augment the administrative team capacity at Bigelow Middle School. It also does not add a building aide for Day Middle School or a 0.5 FTE administrative assistant for Oak Hill. Oak Hill has a large number of special education programs, and we're also looking to make sure that we have the necessary support to be able to schedule and plan IEP meetings and things like that. And this budget does not address that. It also does not add the 4 FTE that we were hoping to have to reestablish the literacy specialist at each school that was cut, I believe, about 5 years ago in the budget. Last year, when I came to present the secondary budget, one of the things I really advocated for was to also reestablish the literacy specialists. And I think if you look at our mid-year STAR data from the middle schools and the instructional focus that our middle schools are working at, we're very much trying to support students in their growth and how they demonstrate proficiency, drawing information from informational text, and using information to make oral and written arguments. And having a literacy specialist at each school would allow us to provide differentiated supports to students, in ways that are very clearly demonstrated in our mid-year STAR reports that students do need additional support with literacy. The budget proposal does not explicitly restore the stipends for after-school tutoring that were cut last year, though if we are able to collect fees for the before-school, after-school supervision, that may mean that we would be able to do different things with the stipend money that was set out. Also, this does not provide continued access to the SEL curriculum that we piloted this year, which is Wayfinder. We were able to do that largely through grant funds, for this year. We don't have those same grant funds for next year. And this budget proposal does not include funds to continue that for middle school. And so what that would mean is that our middle schools would return to the model that we used previously with the teacher leader stipends, providing planning time for the teachers to plan the advisory lessons that are then done during advisory across the school. So for high schools, we have our historical enrollment projections indicate that our high school enrollment is mostly stable. For next year, we are projecting a slight decrease in enrollment at Newton North. I know that over the last couple of years, there has been some volatility with the enrollment projections. Oftentimes, Newton North, has kind of outperformed the enrollment projections, but for next year, our projection is that they'll have reduced enrollment. Newton South is projected to get a little bit bigger next year. So the high school proposal, we are advocating for maintaining level service across both high schools, amidst the minor enrollment fluctuations. We also believe that the investments that we're making at the middle school will flow up to positively impact high school students. And so the investments that we're making in the math pathways, we look at that as linked to the work happening at the high schools. This proposal does not add additional FTE for the CTE programs, although as Dr. Nolan mentioned, we have gotten news that we can expect some additional funds from the state. When that has been clarified, exactly what impacts those funds will have, we will come back to discuss that more. Another thing it does not add is we've been in conversation with our student services department about the opportunity we might have to add team specialists at the high school level that would then free up teacher time, because many of our teachers have to put time in their schedule to facilitate IEP meetings, which takes time away from their prep and their ability to actually teach additional sections. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is in the future budget, possibly being able to add team specialists whose sole job would be to schedule, organize, and run those meetings, which would then free up teacher FTE and allow more opportunities for inclusive classes and co-teaching. And so I just want to build on I think this is I'm an analogy guy, and I really love Dr. Frog's analogy about the green shoots and not a harvest. I think what we're really working towards having a very consistent approach at the elementary and secondary levels. And we've definitely learned some lessons about the impact of having really effective and robust MTSS systems. We want to make sure that that is also consistent at the middle school and high school level. Our data, clearly identifies that differentiated math support will drive better outcomes, particularly from our students furthest from justice. And we are continuing to work urgently to accelerate these outcomes at the secondary level. And the way that we're going to get there is by being consistent, continuing on the path with perseverance, and making sure that we provide stability and the opportunity for our educators to learn the new systems and tools that we put into place so that we can continue to improve outcomes. And with that, I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you. Awesome. So green shoots, they are or are not a harvest?
They are not a
Not a
harvest.
harvest. Got
We have to grow and nurture them.
Questions? Jason, then Victor?
So similarly here, I was attracted to Dr. Nolan's grids, which were really helpful in the middle school. And in a similar way was trying to understand, okay, if there were a change, what would that look like and how much would that stretch us? And I think I was getting there, but I just want to make sure first that I understand how team staffing can work. Because what I'm gathering that I am not 100% confident on is you can increment by half teams. That's kind of like the smallest viable increment. Is that right? And how does that work?
So it works differently at different schools. I will say that the middle school principals, I don't know that half teams are their favorite. That does allow you to add capacity, but it means that there will be there will be some subject areas where there's a pinch because the half team, that means you're teaching math and science, and the other teacher would be teaching ELA and social studies. So that you would be able to add about half the capacity of to teach cohorts, but that means that those teachers would be effectively doubling up in content.
Thank you. I didn't realize that. That's really helpful. And then I assume there's one like 0.75 team, and I'm sure that's even more complicated.
Yes, that is, yes.
Mayor.
Yes, it is not the favorite of the school leader. I think they would be okay with me saying that.
So then if that's forgetting about the quarter team and just focusing on the half team, I was looking at like hunting for, okay, here's a grade level where the ratio is on a relative basis, you're always going to have this low. So I saw one that was 19.7 and, for example, 2.5 teams at that grade level middle school. And so I was just running the rough math. That would have to go from those 197 kids being covered by, I guess that's 10 teachers. It would go down to 8 because we would go to two teams of 4 teachers. And my math says that's almost 25.
Yeah, that would increase the class
bump
size.
you all the way from the lower end to above the highest end of the ratios.
And I just want to say then, as a middle school principal, you schedule math pathways, violin, orchestra, Chinese, and all the other world languages, and you actually will have bubbles where you usually have to, and add special ed, keep a special educator or a math teacher in the wings, in the bullpen, in case you have those bubbles also. So it really, we're about to get a look at our math pathways data. It's going to give us an idea of how cramped we are. We don't even know that yet.
Thanks. So anyway, that helps me understand why it's, I guess I had this principle that I would love you to react to, is that as we grow from the 15 elementary schools to the 4 middle to the 2 high schools, that actually you should have fewer of these scenarios that Dr. Farag was describing, where you're getting meaningful reductions, but the break point isn't there. You have, making it up, 15 kids in 2 classrooms. You can't go to 30 kids in 1 class, that type of. But it seems like in the middle school, it's not that, even though they're bigger buildings with a lot more students, because of this very beneficial team environment that we've created and the break points, that it's actually not that much better. Or how do you think about that?
Well, that's a good question. What I'll quickly say is that, when I think about class sizes, I think that we want to make sure that students have an equitable experience no matter which north or south part of Newton, that they reside in. And so I think that, and you also want to be thinking about within your, any given school or across schools, like what is the constellation of needs, right? And we would want our students with the highest needs, if there are classrooms that are going to have, a more attractive student-teacher ratio, to have those. So to me, I think that, I think that we are doing a pretty good job. I think that, but we still have a lot of work to do to, balance the team sizes and the student-teacher ratios across the middle schools. And so, to be honest with you, I think that it's kind of challenging to think about doing that sort of a reduction and getting up to like a 25 to 1 student-teacher ratio, because that would kind of put us, further back, both on the equitability between students, in a South Side middle school and comparing the students from north to south.
Thanks. That makes sense to me and helps. And then from a high school perspective, in that same sort of continuum, my sense is we're even higher on scale. We don't have the teams concept, but we've got way more complexity of subjects being offered. So how does that, on this, your slide number 9, we do have one of our 2 high schools with, you think about it, ratios, like a meaningful number of students where you could imagine reductions, but what are the factors of complexity that make it challenging to do that math?
So generally, in my experience, I'm reluctant to really make a lot of changes, budgetary changes. If the enrollment, decline or increase is less or is not greater than 3% or is not, more than 3%. To me, that's a pretty good threshold. I think in Newton North's case, for the last couple of years, they seem to do a little bit better than what their projection is. I think that the conversation that we've been having is about core classes versus electives. And the more teacher FTE that we are able to provide, we are able to do a better job of filling student schedules. Like the conversations that we've had about high school have been less about the student-teacher ratio and the class sizes, but more about wanting to be able to offer a range of classes where that students would have full schedules. I think, and so, one example of why I feel like your question to me is less about class sizes and more about, the number of offerings is, we have a robust CTE program that's housed at Newton North. I think because it is housed at Newton North, there will be students who access those classes who are in the formal CTE programs, and some of the students who access those classes access them as electives. Now, the impact of that is that means that there's less space in those classrooms for students from Newton South, who may want to either take them as electives or take them as part of their CTE, right? And so for me, if I'm looking at staffing at the high school, I'm thinking about it is how do we do staffing in such a way that creates opportunities for students to have full schedules, and so that we are not indirectly negatively impacting students' ability to access CTE classes. Another thing I think that we are in the process of thinking about is our approach to utilizing co-teachers to support inclusive opportunities for students on IEPs, so they can be included with students in general education. And the more FTE that we're able to have at the high school level, means that we can really think about being inclusive in terms of offering opportunity to a range of subjects, but also making sure that those classes that we offer can support a range of student needs.
Thank you. And I just want to make the comment in an analogous way that you're sort of what we're not getting to now in the budget. I similarly really want to make sure that's part of our roadmap.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick As always, thank you, Dr. Rodri. Appreciate you. One quick point of just clarification for myself and then one general reflection, I guess. This is on the what this middle school proposed to accomplish this slide. I think it's in the middle there. The 25,000, oh, sorry, I'll give you a chance to get there. Thank you very much. So this last bullet, the second to last bullet point that maintains 25,000, that's just for that's not inclusive of the staff costs, or is it? Or is that purely the materials?
So so number one, we at the end of each year, we have to kind of do an assessment of what kind of condition are the materials in. Number two, I'll just give you an example. In terms of magnets, what this means is that at each of the exit doors, like we did operational rounds at Day Middle School last week, and the more of the magnets that we have, the more we're able to kind of spread out the ways that students exit the building. And so essentially, I don't know off the top of my head right now what the cost would be. We would be able to use any of the stipends or the money that we've set aside on this line to pay for the operations just of the staff doing checking the students in and then ensuring that the kids are able to tap the Yondr pouches and release their phones.
We would or we would not? Sorry, just to make sure I heard that. We would be able to use that or we would not? We would not. Okay. Then this is sort of a naive question, but
Plus, there are 18 doors at every high
Yes,
school.
yeah.
That's really the operational reality.
what I'm trying to figure out is again, this could be totally naive. I know it's naive, but I'm asking anyway. I'm trying to find opportunities to get like seniors to volunteer. Is there ever a pathway where we could get volunteers to help facilitate some of these collections of devices so we're not burdening all units?
Or maybe parents could just shut them off during the school day.
Yeah, so I can get.
I mean, they own the phones, no?
So it seems like what you're asking me is the difference between, the consumables, right, and this number, and would any of the money be used to pay for the staffing? Is that
That's correct, and it's perfectly fine with the way it is. I just want to make sure that those are two mutually exclusive concepts, and that's
Right.
not loading the
So,
5.
well, it is the 25 because that is the cost of 4 middle schools supervision costs,
Okay,
right?
so
It's also $200 a magnet plus the cost of the per unit is what, 25?
Yeah.
30 bucks?
they're $30.
30 bucks. So 1,000 kids times 30 bucks plus 18 times 200 plus 25 grand.
It's
Times
about,
two.
it ends up being about 2 hours a day of staff time, that where you would have, you might have 4 or 5 people doing like 30-minute shifts.
No, it makes sense. Otherwise, it would have been huge inflation in the cost of the Yondr pouches. That's why I was curious
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Okay, no, that's perfect sense. Yeah, I know. That's a good question. Down the road, hopefully we could get the community more involved in backstopping some of those doors.
It's free.
And it makes a huge difference. It really does.
Oh, thank you very much.
You
for
go
all the
in-
work.
we go into the middle school classrooms, you do not see students on phones.
I've heard good things. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Jonathan, Tyler, Tamika, your hand go up to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is super helpful. I'm going to stick with the Yondr pouches for just a second because I can't help myself. I realize that this is at $25,000. This is not going to solve the thinking cap budget problem that we have. But maybe a two-part question. As the parent of a 10-year-old who is not yet in phone land, just how does a Yondr pouch work, and what is the cost of the device?
So what a Yondr pouch does is it allows a student to be able to keep their phone on their person, but not be able to access it. So it is a kind of a neoprene sleeve that when students enter the building, each student is assigned, or they have one with their name on it that is their pouch for the year. When they come in, they have to take their phone, put it in the pouch, and then there is a magnetic device that magnetically seals the pouch.
Got it.
And so the student can have the phone on their person, right? So it's not a situation where we have to, worry about incurring any costs of replacing phones that we have taken that have gone missing. And then at the end of the school day, they have to walk to, a magnet that is either in a handheld device, right? So each school has a certain number of handheld magnet devices, or magnet devices that are affixed to the walls with lock boxes. So that right before dismissal, and we just observed the team do this at Day Middle School on Tuesday, the administrators will go out, unlock the magnets, right? If they didn't do that, then any student could go outside and unlock their phone, right? So we have to hide the magnets until 800 kids exit out of door 11, out of the back of Day Middle School to leave for the day. And so it ends up being 15 or 20 minutes in the morning or 15 or 20 minutes in the afternoon where you have to have individual interaction
I get it.
with up to 800 kids if they have phones, right? And so it's a lot of volume in a short amount of time.
As a matter of like educational policy and the way our schools work, we would just as soon have our students leave their phones at home, correct? Like that is like if we could wave a magic wand and say this is what we'd like to happen. No. Well, so
Yeah.
no, but
Or
so,
go with the phones, but do as I did with my high schoolers. I shut off their access during the school day.
look, my biggest reaction here is that this was a constant topic on the campaign trail. I think there is broad community support for the idea that phones in the classroom are detrimental to education. We looked at an enormous number of ways in which we were looking at fees for things that we actually did want to have happen in the schools and had real heartburn over the idea that we were disincentivizing behaviors and student activities and participation in the school system that we really did want to incentivize. I would love to see a proposal for just billing the cost of this back to families. Like if you're going to bring a phone to school and it's going to be unlocked. Like I don't know why we assume that we as a school system would need to pay for this. I just don't understand. What's that?
The other thing is the state's going to have a say on this probably coming soon too. So that
I'd be shocked if the state said that we as a school system are required to pay for
that
it.
detail.
They will.
But they're going to be
That we have to pay for it?
It will be silent. It will say the things, and then all 230 districts will do what we're doing right now.
I get it. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
we'll have to have the program. It seems like it's inconceivable to me that we're just going to tell people they can't bring phones to school. I'm with the mayor on that one. I think it's going to be very difficult. I don't know why we couldn't have a fee system for this so that families who are sending kids to school with a phone bear the cost of maintaining the quality of education that we've had in the past. We just keep adding these kinds of things, and I don't think we think about it.
I think if I was a Newton parent, I think I would imagine some parents would make the argument that they pay tax dollars, and right that I think that would be I don't know how we would talk some of our parents into that. I think a lot of parents would agree probably right away. I think parents really do appreciate this and the feedback that we've gotten. I know that Dr. Nolan did surveys last year. There is overwhelming support of this because it is such a research backed approach to supporting student learning. I think that I think that in a budget the size of ours, I think the amount of money that we're setting aside for this, I feel like personally, I think is justified. I think what we are not, I think that I think that we should continue doing it as we do it. I think that it would be very difficult to require the parents to pay for this.
Fair enough, and I appreciate that. I want to be very clear. I'm not criticizing the dollar. Like I'm not opining on whether 25 is enough or not. I'm just thinking through the question of incentives, which I think we've talked about a lot here as a school committee in the context of fees and everything else. Thank you.
Yep.
Tyler? One thing I wanted to express and ask about is that at North, we've never had to deal with because we have the phone pocket system where it's just I don't think, but I'm used to having one in every room there, but that is just 30 pockets that you'd put your phone in at the end of class, you take in, you put in the next classroom's one. And what most teachers do is they take attendance based off of is your phone in the pocket or not. And if you don't, you get marked unexcused absent and you lose credit for that class. So I have never seen in my 2 years at North people like actively on their phone during class. And so it seems like that system is working. So I guess my question is, why is the Yonder system only being implemented at middle schools? If it works so well, why don't we implement it in high schools? And if it is not required for high schools, why are they implemented in those?
So that's a great question. I think the first thing I'll say is that it's the scale, right? Because we have 2,000 students at Newton North and a little under 2,000 students at Newton South. And so that would be a lot of pouches, right? And that would be a lot of magnets and that would be a lot of interactions. Second thing I would say is that both schools are open campuses. So the expectation at our middle school is that when you enter for the day, you are with us until dismissal. As you know, that students at the high school level have more maturity, they have different schedules, and they have different they have a little bit more flexibility, and so that the number of locking and unlocking interactions would be much higher. The other thing I'll say is that I think that we do pretty well with students not being on their phones at the high school level. I do think that we, from classroom to classroom, you'll see different degrees to which the cell phone pockets are used. But I see some of the students who, if they have a MacBook, you can mirror your cell phone on your computer. And oftentimes I will be observing a class and I will see a student with a cell phone on their computer and they're doing the things anyway. And so, I think that I commend our educators at the high school level for using the pouch system and to really to provide instruction, cognitively demanding, challenging, engaging instruction that is more interesting than what is on the phone. Right. I think that is our main job, and our educators, I feel like are up for it, and I see them doing great stuff. And I appreciate our students, because I do think I do think that students, if they really felt like it, probably could be on their phones more. And when I'm in classrooms, I see very, very, very little phone distraction, which I think is a credit to our educators and to the really purposeful nature of what our kids do in the classes.
So, Jonathan, I envy you having a 10-year-old and not having to worry about all this. It's great.
I know it's coming for me.
It's coming. But real quick on the Yonder pouch thing, it's not just cell phones, it's all internet-enabled devices. That includes, smart watches, et cetera, that have to go in the little pouch and the little magnet. And so I, as one of the cohort of school committee members now and in the past who've enthusiastically supported this initiative, I think it's necessary. I do agree also, Jonathan, that we should be exploring ways to chip away at this very incremental piece of our budget. But nonetheless, it's our due diligence to say, hey, how do we say, parents, we're incentivizing you to make choices like the superintendent is advocating, either don't buy the phone, leave the phone at home, turn it off during the day, or you can help us by purchasing one of these really handy devices that make the educator's job easier. I think there's room for that conversation down the road. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So specific to your budget proposal, how have we handled the need for operational stipends vis-a-vis the arrival and dismissal? How do we handle that currently? Like, is this new, or is this newly infused into the budget?
So we are handling it through having some stipends, but it's not enough. I think what we do is we have a lot of our administrators who are doing, where the teams that are doing this, the admin teams are all part of that group, right?
And we received an earmark grant from Amy Sangiolo to get that done and to pay the stipends, and they're running out.
Because that's the system that I'm familiar with, where it was the administrative teams who were really having the largest part of the burden of overseeing the children who were either in the gyms or the cafeterias or whatever. So we're looking to go beyond that system and just something a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think that it's, what is the saying? Many hands make light work. I think that depending on the building, depending on the number of entrances or exits that you have, there are sometimes during the day where schools feel like they're just stretched a little bit more thinly. And we want, we want our administrators, obviously to be part of arrival and dismissal. I really like when the principal is able to be, at the front, greeting the students and maybe not having the same, operational responsibilities as other folks on the staff. Dr. Nolan, thank you for the reminder of the earmark, because that was something when we initially instituted it, that we had that is running down. And so we are also encouraging, our schools to have as effective operational strategies as possible, and really finding, it's people power that we want to pay for.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The other thing I was wondering about was the split with Cabot driving half this, I don't know, half, certain portion of students today, certain portion to Bigelow. Are those numbers tracking in the direction that we'd intended when we, in the school committee, approved those, that split? And the related staffing needs to support the increases at Bigelow, is that something that was, I don't know, contemplated at the time, but just, it would be either a scenario of additional staff at Bigelow or having additional pressures and staffing needs at Day? Is that the way I should be thinking?
I think we're gonna have to look into that because you and I both weren't here for that decision. I don't know. I don't know what was said out loud for that. So let's find out what was said.
It stands to reason that that would be a realistic and
I would hope.
reasonable
Yeah.
expectation,
Mhm.
even if not articulated at the time.
Yep.
Yes, and I also think at Bigelow, we are looking, and I work closely with Dr. Green to think about, kind of what is the right size, because they do have limited space. And one of the things that we did, that Dr. Green and I did earlier this year, is they have two really large spaces in their building that are, they're the old locker rooms and showers that are unused, and so really thinking about, what are the ways that we can utilize the Cabot split as a way to make dynamic adjustments based on what our current enrollment is. I think, it is a great opportunity, to go to Bigelow. I think they're doing really great work there. I visited classrooms with Dr. Green last week. And so we want there to be balanced on the north side so that we have, relatively comparative class sizes. And in order to do that, we use the split so that we can, be really strategic, but we do get to a point where it's not just staffing, we also have to think about the space. And so Dr. Green and I are already having conversations about, like, if the trend continues, where we're projecting 56 additional sixth graders next year, as that bubble grows, if the fifth graders, rising next year, if that trend continues, we're also going to have to look at maximizing, the unused space at Bigelow.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Final item on the agenda tonight.
Oh, sorry, real quick before we leave the budget discussion. Are we not getting the budget books?
So
Something?
I gave you a level service with adjustments budget. And I have a feeling that that's not going to be the budget. So I'm going to need some direction before I make Liam write 5 versions of the budget book.
Gotcha.
Just one version of the budget book. All right. Our last item is a planned motion for, you have a memo, I'm in your materials about this, for amending the Ward and Underwood SOI vote from December 15th, 2025. So I'm going to make that motion and then we can discuss it. So I move that we amend the motion previously adopted on December 15th, 2025 to remove the language votes and to direct the NPS administration to prepare statements of interest, SOIs, for both Ward and Underwood and to indicate yes as potential consolidation, end of quote. So what this leaves in the original motion is the acceptance of the long-range plan. And it takes out the idea that we would submit SOIs this spring, and so there would be no box to check because there are no SOIs. We discussed this a little bit last time, but we can open for more discussion or questions if anyone has new thoughts. Seeing none is.
Just very briefly, because we got questions about this when we were with some of the community recently. I think it just bears mentioning one more time what's different. And so I think the two discrete points for me that really have changed is, number one, I think there was a conception last time that saving our place in line with an elementary building with the MSBA would advantage us in the future. And I think that's either been cleared up or amended or what have you. And so I think that was sort of discreetly different. And I think the second is we know we need to do some analysis regardless of the outcome, and the opportunity provided by the mayor and his team to do that on a more expedited basis than we could possibly hope to do within the context of the MSBA process. You know, those two things coupled for me, just speaking for myself, really made a big difference and made this a person, speaking personally, one to support.
Would you like to second it? We got that part.
Seconded.
Anyone else? Shall we vote? All right, let's go. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes, Ward 8.
Yes.
Mayor Laredo.
Yes.
All right, pass 9-0. That's it for tonight. We're adjourned.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.